Hello guys, welcome back to Animwata. For today. We're going to see what if Izuku has a quirk which curses him into cat ears. Married to Nejiro. Support the author Izuku with cat ears by out for lunch. On the day when Izuku returned to the Class 1A dorm after the exhausting battle with Overhaul and the successful rescue of Eri, he lay on his bed, unable to think about anything else but the aftermath of the entire event. The moment for him to sleep zipped past him, escaping his grasp. He couldn't help but contemplate the chain of events over the last few days. To say it was a roller coaster of emotions and insanity was an understatement. It was tiring, but life didn't stop there. There would always be more people in need of his help. There was always a new goal to reach. And he still wasn't the greatest hero, yet who could save everyone with a smile? So there was that. But every time Izuku tried to close his eyes and get some sleep, his brain waded through the events of his work study repeatedly. Was there something he could have done differently to save everyone? Save Naitai? To prevent Mirio from losing his quirk? Izuku sat on the edge of his bed and walked to his door. He opened it and glanced at both ends of the hallway for any wanderers. When he found none, he walked to the kitchen using the stairs. He grabbed himself a cup of water before he sat outside on the stairs, where the chilly air slithered around him, prompting him to shiver. However, the starry nights smiling down on him as he finished the cup of water were a pleasant touch to an eventful day. Once he finished the cup of water, he turned around to re-enter the dorm, but noticed the kitchen light on. With alarm bells ringing in his head, Izuku tried to sneak back to his room, but a creak informed whoever was in the kitchen of his presence. Izuku closed his eyes, praying they wouldn't look his way, but it was inevitable. Denki Kaminari's head poked out from behind the fridge with concern, but his worry faded when he realized it was Izuku. With a slice of cheese hanging from his mouth and another in his hand, Kaminari waved his hand at Izuku. Kaminari closed the fridge door and took the slice of cheese out of his mouth before speaking. Midoriya, I thought you were a monster at first. You know, one of those ladies with the white dress and long hair all down in front of her face? He said, waving his fingers in front of his face to emulate the long hair. But I don't have any long hair. Izuku pointed out. Bah, whatever. You know what I meant. I just thought nobody else was awake, except me anyway. What keeps you up late at night? Was it because you also wanted a midnight snack like me? Kaminari asked, opening the door of the microwave to reveal a burger patty. He placed the slices of cheese in his hand on it, then turned around to ask the important question. Or was it because of your work study? Well, but it's nothing, though. I'm fine. I promise. Izuku responded with a smile. Whatever you say, pal. But if you find you need some help, you can talk to your favorite lightning boy, Kaminari said, pointing a thumb at his chest and a wink on his face. Thanks for the offer. But it's moments like this that I should smile some more to show everyone else that things are going to be okay. Izuku said with a smile. Kaminari nodded and took a bite out of his midnight snack. Say I have one question, though. Izuku tilted his head in confusion, but entertained it. If it was important, he wasn't willing to shy away from helping him. What is it? Do you by any chance have Nejiro Hado's phone number? Izuku deadpanned at him. Izuku didn't know why he expected too much from Kaminari, but it was nice to see that some things didn't change. Izuku let out a laugh. No, I wasn't under the same work-study mentor as her. True, but did you see how cute she is? I'm kind of jealous of you, dude. Do you think I'm out of her league by any chance? I think we all are. The next day, while Todoroki and Bakugo left to earn another chance at obtaining their provisional hero licenses, everyone had a day off because Aizawa deemed it a necessity. However, Izuku wasn't one to sit still when all the convictions he felt throughout his time at the work-study bogged him down. This led Izuku to train by himself at Gym Gamma early in the morning, then visit the city of Mizudafu nearby for some supplies and snacks. Class 1A wanted for the afternoon. Their attempts to talk him out of it fell on deaf ears because of Izuku's insistence on taking a breather after the tango with Overhaul and complicated moral situations. As a contingency, if anything happened, Izuku packed his provisional hero license card. Izuku traveled through the city by foot, surveying the civilians walking around him. As always, it was bustling with life. And it didn't take long before several people noticed his presence and asked for his signature or to take a photo with him. After fulfilling the requests of the fans, Izuku went back to shopping and purchasing what Class 1A needed in a general store. He browsed the shelves that were at his eye level and then to the next shelf before gazing down the aisles. How they don't have an All Might-themed notebook. Izuku sighed. It was the only thing missing for himself, but he fulfilled everyone else's request for their share of items. With a shrug, Izuku bought them and exited the store. But as he exited the store, Izuku watched a criminal snatch a purse in front of his eyes and bolt down the street. Stunned from the sudden but bold action, Izuku put his bags down on the floor and was about to take off on a sprint when he heard a woman shout, "Help! Somebody took my purse. Ma'am, I'll get it back for you." Izuku shouted as he activated his quirk and blasted down the street. What would have been a good head start for the criminal was closed by the next person who inherited one for all's quirk. Izuku pinned him down and tied his arms behind his back. Just as Izuku was about to speak, the criminal's hand opened and splashed his face with a powder that twinkled in the sun. Izuku shook his head and coughed, watching the pink smoke disappear. Something didn't feel right, but he couldn't pinpoint the reason. Izuku shook his head again to omit the uncomfortable feeling, but it didn't work. Without realizing it, Izuku let go of the criminal, who bolted down the street with urgency. "Hey, wait!" Izuku exclaimed, about to give chase when he noticed the purse was on the ground. Or not. Izuku glanced around himself and found a couple of civilians looking at him. Some of them had their phones out. It was quite unsettling to know they watched him like a hawk. Izuku picked the purse up and returned it to the thankful lady. He headed back home with the bags of supplies in his hand as quickly as possible. He didn't know what the criminal did to him, but Izuku craved to go wash his face to get rid of whatever it was. Hopefully, the quirk wasn't dangerous. When Izuku made it to the Class 1A dorm, he opened the door and placed the supplies he bought on the ground next to the sofas while fidgeting with the strings of his hoodie. Several members of Class 1A greeted him, but stopped, causing Izuku to panic from the lack of continuance. What were they looking at? "Gee, guys, is there something wrong with me?" Izuku asked, pointing at himself and releasing the strings of his hoodie. "When did you grow fluffy ears?" Kaminari asked, staring at the top of his head with intensity. "Didn't we literally see each other last night? Fluffy ears?" Izuku asked, echoing Kaminari. "Oh, dear, it seems like what Kaminari said is correct. You have grown ears, Midoriya." Yaoyorozu confirmed. Shiro put a hand on his chin in contemplation. "You know, Midoriya, I never took you as someone who would cosplay. Maybe an All Might impersonation, but you look like a cat. Why are you dressed like that? Anyway, Midoriya, you look like one of those live streamers who wears cat ears to make themselves look cute. Though I'm kind of into that stuff," Mineta said, earning disgusted stares from his peers. "What are you guys talking about?" Izuku trailed off. Oh no. Izuku sprinted upstairs, leaving his classmates in confusion. Once Izuku made it to his room, he opened the door to his bathroom and stared at the mirror. What stared back at him was on top of his head. It was a pair of cat ears, and it was fluffy, as Kaminari said. To say Izuku's mouth hit the floor was an understatement. It dropped to the core of the earth. "What the heck? Oh no, no, no." Izuku half screamed, half whispered. His heartbeat skipped a step multiple times. This can't be real. But it was. With a grimace, Izuku reached up and touched them to ensure they were real. They were soft, and every rub sent signals of bliss to his brain, which concerned him. It was as real as the light was. Izuku continued to stare at the mirror before he let out a scream. Izuku touched it again. Another scream. What kind of dumb quirk forced someone to grow cat ears on top of their head? Izuku took a few deep breaths to calm himself down, but found it uncontrollable as a billion different situations and a trillion different questions flew by his head. Everyone was going to see them whenever he went out in public. What were his friends going to think of him? What was he going to tell his teachers? What was All Might going to think of them? It was all so embarrassing. Izuku inspected the mirror and reached to touch the cat ears with a grimace on his face. It was such an odd feeling as he rubbed the soft fuzz in between his fingers. Izuku released it and flicked his ears. He winced at the impact and let out a sigh. Suddenly, he heard a knock at his door. I'm busy," Izuku yelled, praying whoever was at the door would leave. Instead, the door opened. However, because the cat ears had seized his concentration, he was oblivious to the sound. A second later, Ashido poked her head through the doorway, startling Izuku through the mirror. Ah, those ears are just as cute as they said they would be. Ashido gushed, reaching over to touch his ears. When I heard you grew cat ears, I just had to come over and see for myself. The cat ears on top of Izuku's head curved downwards as he shrank to avoid her hand. But once Ashido's hand landed on his head and rubbed his cat ears, Izuku froze. It felt nice and enjoyable. The way her fingers scratched behind his ears elicited an emotion of satisfaction to surge amid his chest. It was like something deep within his heart was being itched, and he was powerless to put a stop to it. Instead, the new instincts the quirk gave him coerced him to push his head further in the grasp of Ashido's hand, so he could relish the warmth of her hand. But then his human instincts kicked in. It granted the perspective of analyzing his situation. What the heck was he doing? Izuku pulled away from Ashido's hand with a hand to cover his face. I'm Ashido. Ignore whatever that was, okay? I didn't mean to do that. I was just enjoying it. Now, you don't have to be so shy with me, Midoriya, Ashido said, teasing Izuku. Okay, that's enough. Izuku squeaked, pushing Ashido out of his room. Once Ashido was out of his territory, Izuku closed the door and locked it. He walked back to the bathroom and touched his cat ears again. With a sigh, Izuku tugged on them, praying they would come off, but their persistence to stay on his head was more than enough to tell him it would not work. Izuku let out another miserable sigh before he shook his head. These ears better go away soon. And so, for the rest of the day, Izuku created a prison out of his bedroom, afraid to step outside of his room for fear of his anxieties manifesting into the real world. Luckily, his classmates understood him because they didn't bother him for the rest of the day, other than to slip notes under the crack of his door to relay the information that food was waiting for him outside the door. With no socialization for his brain, Izuku scrolled through social media in the comfort of his bed. At some point, Izuku felt the heaviness of his eyelids weighing down on him. As his eyes closed, his brain took him to the land of dreams. A minute later, a knock at his balcony door snapped him out of his dreams and pulled him back to the grips of reality where the sun was waving farewell to the world. Izuku inhaled and scrambled with his blanket for a second before staring at the balcony door, curious about who could be behind the curtains. He could see the shadow of a person there, so he did what any person in his shoes would do, try to go back to sleep. But the knock at the door didn't call for a ceasefire. Instead, its intensity strengthened. With a grunt, Izuku moved and sat on the edge of his bed. For a second, Izuku forgot about his cat ears, but when he raised his arms to stretch, he felt the fuzziness of it brush against his skin. Izuku stood from his bed and turned the lights on. Then he cautiously opened the curtains to his balcony door and peeked from the brief view it gave. The palpitations of his heartbeat shot to an erratic rhythm when he saw who it was. It was as if fate was toying with him. Nejiro Hado stood outside his door. Izuku unlocked the balcony door and opened it to a tiny degree. Nejiro? Can I help you with anything? Oh, I didn't notice you there, Nejiro said as a smile crossed her features. I didn't want to interrupt anything, but I heard from one of your classmates that you had cat ears especially. Can I see them? Please don't tell me it was Ashido. Hey, do you also have a quirk to read minds? Please come back another time. Izuku Midoriya isn't available at this time. Leave a message at the beep. Nejiro wedged her foot in the door crack, preventing Izuku from shutting it. This forced Izuku to squeak in fear. Wait, but I'm curious. I want to see how cute they are, Nejiro exclaimed, lifting her hands and curling them to imitate the movements of a cat. Izuku let out a shudder from the curiosity of Nejiro staring into the depths of his soul. What was the situation unfolding to? And did he want to know? Izuku didn't know how to respond to Nejiro's request to see his cat ears. It was embarrassing enough that several of his classmates had seen it. Potentially, all of them knew it because rumors spread like wildfire in a small class of 20 students. Though it wasn't everyone, 2 of his classmates had gone to take remedial courses to earn their provisional hero licenses. But they were bound to learn, eventually. Yet the mere thought of Bakugo discovering his cat ears made Izuku want to curl up and hide. However, His current problem was Nejiro Hado, and she didn't seem like the type of person who was going to leave despite his protests. And he knew as much because of her curiosity about quirks. With reluctance and a soul's worth of contemplation, Izuku slid the balcony door open, much to Nejiro's surprise. Though Nejiro's shock turned to curiosity when her eyes landed on top of his head. Izuku averted her gaze while his cat ears mirrored his emotions by twirling downwards. Nejiro? Could you be quick about this? It would be embarrassing if anyone from Class 1A saw what was happening. Oh, are you worried about that? Don't you worry, I got the solution for that, Nejiro said, allowing herself into his room. Wait, what are you doing? Izuku squeaked. I didn't mean it like that. Izuku's heartbeat spiked. The thought of a girl entering his room didn't feel right. She knew it was just the two of them in the room, right? A question mark floated above Nejiro's head. Nejiro could not grasp what she was doing wrong. But how else can I see the cat ears in privacy? Izuku stayed silent. She had a good point. But that didn't mean she could barge into his room and touch his cat ears for the next hour or something. Oh, look, Nejiro. Izuku stuttered, finding it difficult to speak his thoughts as Nejiro closed the door behind her and turned around with a smile on her face. This is embarrassing for me, and it's a shock for me. It's a big surprise. And oh no, I'm repeating myself, aren't I? Well, a little. I think it's amusing, Nejiro said, giggling at him. Izuku was about to say something, but stared at her smile. It was oddly beautiful. It gave him a sense of security, as if her smile protected the world from evil. That alone was a miracle, considering the amount of stress he had recently gone through. Izuku shook his head. What was he thinking about? With a look of intrigue, Nejiro lifted her hand and reached over. Izuku jolted in shock and retreated from her reach, but her hand was persistent. Izuku would be lying if he said he didn't want to feel the touch of Nejiro Hado, but the thought of someone as attractive as her was the problem. A faint fragrance of perfume drifted through the air. He couldn't pinpoint the exact floral notes of it, but it smelled nice. In the back of his mind, he had a lingering feeling Nejiro was only here for his cat ears and to satisfy her curiosity about a new quirk. Didn't that mean Nejiro was using him for a shallow reason? Izuku didn't have any time to think further as Nejiro's hand landed on his head. Izuku froze on the spot, experiencing the touch of a girl rubbing his newly grown cat ears for the second time. But there was something different compared to Ishido's somewhat rough demeanor. For someone who seemed like a passionate quirk enthusiast and an airhead, Nejiro's touch was surprisingly soft. It was like she understood that the cat ears were a genuine part of his body. The warmth of Nejiro's hand spread from his ears down to his head, enveloping him with a fuzzy emotion. It was nice. Izuku tried to restrain himself, but couldn't, as he nuzzled his head against her hand. Nejiro must have found it endearing because she took some time away from his ears to pat him on the head, and then was right back to the ears with delicate rubs. There, it wasn't so bad, right? Nejiro asked. Please don't tell anyone about this, Izuku pleaded, his cheeks burning from embarrassment. Don't worry. Your cat ears are all mine, Nejiro hummed. Izuku tilted his head in confusion, pondering the meaning behind her response. But Nejiro didn't allow him time to contemplate as she switched her style from rubbing to poking his ears. They flapped with each poke, eliciting a reaction of nervousness from Izuku as he pulled his head away. Nejiro frowned, disappointment written on her face. She wanted to spend more time with his cat ears. That much was obvious. But she quickly brightened at the prospect of doing something else to continue spending time with him. Hey, so I know you were just affected by the quirk, but I want to know everything about it, Nejiro asked, her curiosity overflowing with fervor. Do you know if you have other cat features on you other than ears? Do you possess a tail? And did you inherit the instincts of a cat? So, if I wave a feather toy in front of you, would you lunge for it? This is just so exciting to think about. What? How should I know that? I didn't experiment with myself if I have those qualities. I locked myself in all day telling no one, including my teachers. Izuku groaned, rethinking all the situations that could unfold from the stupid cat ears. Oh no, what is Aizawa-sensei going to think when he sees this? I don't even want to know. I doubt he's going to do anything, Izuku. He's going to pat you on the head like I did, because he likes cats, right? So this means he's going to adopt you now. Nejiro exclaimed, reaching over to pat him on the head again. Izuku relented to her touch, but stared at her in bewilderment. You're joking, right? Yeah, I'm joking, Nejiro said with a giggle. Izuku sighed and moved to sit on the edge of his bed. What was he going to do? All the thoughts, trampling the analytical side of his brain, overwhelmed him to the point of depression. The point of no return had occurred to him. The cat ears were on his head, and it wasn't like he could wear a hoodie over his head or a hat all day to cover it. It was against the dress code for UA High School, and there wasn't a way to tell how long the quirk would last. Nejiro wandered into his vision, catching his attention before he averted his gaze. The melancholy look from him affected Nejiro as her smile disappeared. She invited herself to sit next to him without saying a word. Instead, she looked around the room for several seconds before redirecting her attention to him. But because of Izuku's continuance to ignore her, Nejiro spoke up first. Are you thinking it's a bad thing? Nejiro asked. With a glum expression, Izuku was about to answer, but took some time to gather his thoughts. I don't know how to face my classmates. I just feel like they're going to make fun of me. And how am I supposed to walk around all day at school, looking like this? I mean, just look at this. It looks too cute for someone like me. It's too embarrassing. Nejiro leaned in his direction, surprising Izuku as he tilted in the opposite direction. Her proximity was too close for his liking. Nejiro smiled and nodded her head. You know what? I agree with your statement. You are too cute with those cat ears. For a second, Izuku thought he heard wrong. One of the top beauties in his school said what to him? Huh, nothing. Nejiro sang as she giggled at his reaction. But I have to say, for all the time I've known you so far, I thought something more devastating would have brought you down. After all, you're the one who fought Overhaul, right? Yeah, that was me, but I feel ashamed right now. Don't feel bad. I think you look just fine, Izuku. So at least you have someone like me who isn't making fun of you. And if it's any comfort, girls will find you endearing because you look more approachable with those cat ears. That's a positive, isn't it? Nejiro asked. They will. Of course. Well, at least I know I can't speak for every girl out there, but come on. Those cat ears, though. Nejiro gushed, holding Izuku's face in between her hands. This forced Izuku to stare at the blissful features on her face. She seemed so happy to meet someone she barely knew, and her warm smile confirmed it. She wasn't holding back despite their strangeness with one another. Anyway, that's enough about your cat ears. I want to reiterate one of my questions from before. Do you have a cat tail? Can I check your back to see if you have a tail? Nejiro asked. On instinct, Izuku's hand zipped behind him to prevent Nejiro from touching him should she try to validate if he had a tail. But she hadn't moved an inch, respecting his personal space. Izuku shook his head. His cat ears followed pursuit and wobbled along with his movement. No, I don't. Nejiro's blue eyes danced with mirth. Fine by me. Anyway, I'll leave you alone now. I'm sure you want to rest after all that you experienced on your first sped-up work study, she said, turning to leave. Wait, Nejiro Izuku said without thinking. So when Nejiro turned and focused her attention on him, he froze on the spot. What was he supposed to ask her? There were a few questions he wanted to ask her, but one came to the forefront. DDO, if our work-study programs are continuing after this? Oh, they didn't tell you yet? I guess our teachers are still busy trying to make a decision that'll help you guys through your tragic work studies, and I don't blame them for that. Aside from that, I overheard rumors they were being canceled. I don't know if that's true. I guess Aizawa-sensei will tell you the final decision when it's set in stone. Anyway, that's enough. Get some rest today, all right? Izuku nodded his head and watched her float to his balcony door, then looked at his hands in contemplation. For a second, Izuku thought Nejiro was going to leave, so when he looked back at the door, he was surprised to find Nejiro still there. Is there something you need? Izuku asked. No, nothing. I'll see you tomorrow, okay? Izuku was about to answer, but she winked and left his room. It took a second to decipher what she said, but it hit him like a truck when it did. Wait, tomorrow? Izuku repeated. What did she mean by that? She was coming back tomorrow to visit him again? For what reason? Didn't she already satisfy her curiosity by touching his ears? If so, there was no point in her return. With a sigh, Izuku dragged his hands down his face. The thoughts bouncing in his cranium were too much to handle. As a young teenager, Izuku didn't know if he was supposed to face this much stress. He still had to deal with revealing his cat ears to the rest of his classmates, teachers, and the rest of the school. On the other hand, Nejiro's wish to return tomorrow weighed heavily on his shoulders, along with the well-being of Eri. And on top of it all, he still had to be a student and train his quirk to take the brunt of having one for all passed down to him. When Izuku went to lie on his bed that night, he couldn't sleep a wink, despite the lack of rest from last night. The whirlwind of emotions was akin to being tossed around in a tornado. Tomorrow could come soon enough. He didn't want to see what it held for him. Nejiro Hado wasn't lying when she said she would meet him tomorrow, but it wasn't under good circumstances. Uraraka, Kirishima, Azui, and Izuku received an invitation to attend Naitai's funeral early in the morning. All Might and Aizawa received invitations as well. As for the Big Three, they also tagged along because of their involvement in the raid. But the Big Three had to take a separate car since the car borrowed from the school was too small to fit everyone. Despite the heavy atmosphere, his teacher, mentor, and friends continuously glanced at him during the drive to the funeral, creating mixed emotions of mournfulness and curiosity. And he couldn't blame them. When they arrived at the funeral, they paid proper respects to Naitai. Throughout the car ride, Izuku feared his cat ears would detract from the respect they would pay Naitai, but nobody cared about it the moment they stepped out of the car. Not even the other heroes at the funeral considered it. And it was all for the better. After the funeral, an announcement informed them that the collaboration between the hero agencies and the students from UA High School was discontinued. And so, everyone separated to bid farewell to their respective mentors until the work studies continued at a suitable time. Izuku watched as Mirio did most of the talking with Centipeder and Bubble Girl. They acknowledged him, but they knew Mirio personally, so the conversation leaned in his direction. Izuku glanced at his friends, talking to their mentors. Then his eyes landed on Nejiro, the last person to earn his gaze. She was busy talking to Ryuko and embracing her. Izuku refocused on the conversation at hand, but found Centipeder and Bubble Girl facing him with patience. Izuku froze in fear. Had he missed what they were saying to him, or were they waiting for him for a long time? Sorry, were you saying something? Izuku asked. No, I have said nothing yet, Centipeder said, slinging something off his shoulder and handing it to Izuku. Here, this will be safer with you. It was a poster tube. For a moment, Izuku hesitated. What was it for? But then it clicked in his brain. It was the 10th anniversary All Might poster. I apologize, Centipeder. I don't remember asking for this. Centipeder inched it closer to Izuku's reluctant grasp. You didn't have to. Your actions justified it. After all, Naitai told me you wanted it. Keep it safe for Naitai, will you? Bubble Girl said with a warm smile. Izuku accepted it in his hands. It didn't feel like it was his, but he would not deny something Naitai wanted for him. Thank you. And I will, Izuku said with a smile of his own. He was going to treasure it until the day he died. Mirio and Izuku bid their farewells to Naitai's assistants. Izuku watched them walk off. When he turned around, he found Mirio had already disappeared from his side. Izuku scanned the room and found Mirio with his friends, the other members of the Big Three. The somber looks between the three were enough to convince Izuku to not interrupt them. But as he was staring at them, Nejiro caught his glance. She smiled, but returned to talking with the others. Izuku could feel his cheeks burn from embarrassment. The thought of Nejiro touching his cat ears and calling him cute was still fresh in his mind. Izuku avoided her gaze and walked to the car, where he stored the poster in a safe place, which was in the back seat. However, when he turned around, Nejiro was right there, next to him. Izuku flinched, his cat ears doing the same by pointing straight up, then drooping downwards to match his shocked emotion. How did she sneak up on him like that? And Nejiro? I thought you were talking to Mirio and Tamaki? Well, not anymore. I'm going to talk with them more later, but I wanted to check how you were holding up. I figured this would have a bigger impact on you, since you've known him personally more than I have. So are you doing fine? I am. Thanks for asking, Nejiro. Izuku said, smiling to back his claim. Nejiro smiled. Then I'll see you around, okay? Izuku returned her smile and nodded his head. He watched her leave to walk toward Mirio and Tamaki. Izuku didn't know, but the question she asked was comforting. It was nice when someone checked on him out of kindness. Still, the thought of Naitai's death was going to weigh heavily on his mind. That afternoon, when Izuku returned to the dorms, various members of Class 1A worked up the courage to knock on his bedroom door. Or should he say, the ones who were extremely interested. Izuku lay on his bed, snuggling with a blanket and scrolling through his phone with mild interest, when he heard several voices outside of his door. There was no further action that needed to be done. Izuku already knew why they were there. Izuku quietly groaned to himself and pulled the blankets above his head. It didn't cover his cat ears since he wasn't used to the addition of them, but the yearning to disappear never felt stronger. A knock at his bedroom door. Izuku groaned again. Another knock resonated at his door, along with a call of his name from Hado. It coerced him to answer their curiosity. Izuku sighed and rolled off his bed, delicately landing on his feet without making a sound. He crossed his room and opened the door to peek out from the crack. From there, he saw the girls from Class 1A standing outside. And when Izuku meant the girls, he meant all the girls. Izuku's heart jumped and took off for a loop around the world. What were they doing here? Izuku was about to close the door, but Hado noticed the door ajar while the others talked to each other. Midoriya, it's nice to see you again after you avoided us for this long. Hado exclaimed, forcing the door open. Izuku yelped in shock and lifted his hands to his head to conceal his cat ears. Because of the noise he made, 6 pairs of eyes locked onto him. They traveled around, fixing their gaze on him, then shifted their attention to the top of his head where the cat ears were supposed to be visible. Luckily, his hands protected him from their eyes. Can we not do this today? This is embarrassing, Izuku said, praying they would leave him alone. But it seemed like Hado came prepared. Nah, think about it like this, Midoriya. You're going to have to show us your cat ears eventually when school resumes. But don't you think it would be better to do it in front of a small group first before everyone else finds out? It's like gradual exposure. But there isn't a single man here. Oh, come on. This is better because we're going to be more forgiving than the boys. I'm sure they're going to harass you a bit, but we're going to cuddle you instead. See, cuddle? Izuku stuttered, his mind spiraling in panic. Well, you guys know I'm not actually a cat, right? Hagakure cut in before Hado could respond while tugging on one of Izuku's arms. We know, but come on, Midoriya. Don't be such a party pooper. All of us are here just to see your cat ears, so stop hiding them. Wait, please wait. My heart's not ready for this, Izuku exclaimed, but his protests fell on deaf ears as Hado and Hagakure wrangled his arms until they were down by his side, or rather bunched up in front of himself in an embarrassed mess. Izuku understood their point, but he couldn't help but feel embarrassed about revealing his cat ears to anyone, regardless of the situation. Perhaps it was better they did it for him, but it still didn't decrease his humiliation any less. Still, he couldn't tell. Were they trying to cheer him up after a tough day at Naitai's funeral? He knew Uraraka and Azui were also in the raid, so maybe they needed an escape. And his cat ears provided the perfect distraction. Whoa, he actually has cat ears, Jiro said. I thought it was a lie everyone made up. I also didn't believe it too, but it looks like it's true, Uraraka said. Sorry to ask this, Deku, but is it part of your body? Izuku nodded his head, and when she gained enough courage, Uraraka walked to his location and touched his ears. She even tugged on them to ensure the authenticity of them. Izuku closed his eyes and went along with the tugs, aware she would not perform it forcefully, but still worried she might. They really are real, Uraraka confirmed. I believe it was fake when I first saw it, but when Midoriya didn't come out of his room for the entire day yesterday, my suspicions grew. But seeing it up close is a different story. It looks cute. Momo pondered, a hand resting on her face. Izuku blushed at her compliment. Thanks? As for Hado and Hagakure, they messed around with his cat ears after Uraraka, experiencing the fluffiness to their heart's content. However, it seemed like Hado was the one who missed his cat ears the most, because she scratched behind his ears, touched the ear fuzz, and poked it. Much to Izuku's detriment, Hado was indulging herself a little too much. Okay, Hado, I think you guys all know I have cat ears now, Izuku said. Azui raised a finger to her chin and stared at him. Midoriya, when did you grow cat ears? Wasn't your quirk super strength? Karo. As Izuku answered Azui, Yaoyorozu and Jiro shuffled over to get a feel of his cat ears through Ishido's invitation. This is going to be awkward, but you know the day I went out to get some supplies and snacks for us yesterday, right? Azui nodded. Well, I saw a villain steal a woman's purse and gave chase. When I caught him, he threw some pink powder on my face, which helped him escape while I was confused. I felt nothing different, but maybe it was my adrenaline. And on the way back, the cat ears grew. So that's the condensed version of my story. It's kind of annoying. Despite what others might say, Izuku trailed off, his ears flopping downwards to mirror his emotions. Jiro and Yaoyorozu flinched from the movements. They knew Izuku could control his cat ears to move, but not to such an extent. Jiro poked it, mirroring what Ishido had done, and watched it flicker to her touch. A smile crossed her face, but she said nothing to Izuku directly. And it wasn't like he could see behind himself. Does this mean you also have a cattail? Yaoyorozu asked. Instinctively, Izuku reached behind himself and tugged his shirt downward, just in case one of them reached over without his permission to check. Izuku shook his head, his ears swishing around with him. And no, I don't have any, and I would like it if nobody checked. I'm just hoping it doesn't grow later if it does. I don't know what I would do with my life. Have you ever thought of asking Aizawa-sensei to erase the quirk? Yaoyorozu asked. Well, yes, but I don't think it would work. The physical components would remain after Aizawa-sensei erases the quirk, so it wouldn't help with anything. Yes, I know I'm just suggesting some solutions here. It seems like you're not fond of the cat ears, so here's hoping we can somehow get rid of it in a way that isn't painful. Unless the only solution is it goes away in time. Izuku considered her response. Yes, sorry, if it looked like I lashed out a little. I'll still go to the teachers and consult them on this quirk. But as I get more comfortable, because I don't think I can face them right now. Izuku exclaimed, covering his face with his hands. This resulted in his voice coming out muffled, but the girls understood him just fine. Midoriya, don't you worry about a thing. We'll be there to defend you if they ever attack you. Ishido said, comforting him by hugging him in front of everyone. Izuku blushed, opting to stare at the floor so he didn't have to see everyone's reaction. Why were they being so kind to him? Was it a superficial reason? It was definitely because he had cat ears, wasn't it? Now it meant he looked cuter and appealing to everyone. How embarrassing. Hey, so what should we call ourselves? Do you think the name Midoriya Protection Squad works? MPS for short? Ishido asked, glancing at everyone for a consensus. Wait, what? No, you don't have to go that far. Izuku protested, but Ishido wasn't willing to listen, winning the attention of everyone to create a squad that'll protect Izuku if he was bullied for his cat ears. In all fairness, it was a good idea considering people might tease him, but he didn't want to see the other side of the coin where the girls of Class 1A followed him wherever he went just to protect him from any snide remark. On one hand, things were looking up for him, like obtaining the interest of Nejiro Hado and a renewed influx of attention from his female classmates. But he would have to face the boys of Class 1A soon and his teachers, an entire UA high school, and villains if he ever did another work study. And oh gosh, was he going to have these cat ears forever? Why were there so many complications just for possessing cat ears? A couple of days later, classes continued as the months shifted from September to October. While Izuku would have loved to check on Precious Eri, they didn't allow any visitors while they studied the intricacies of Eri's quirk. The only exciting event was the return to class after their brief hiatus from the disastrous work studies. But a certain feeling lingered with him throughout the morning as he got ready for the eventful day ahead of him. Izuku would have loved to avoid it, but it was bound to happen as Ishido said it would. Izuku was the earliest in the classroom, sitting in his seat. Nobody else was there until Ida and Yaoyorozu walked in simultaneously. The moment Izuku made eye contact with him, he shrank in his chair. Unfortunately, sinking in his chair did so much, and it didn't hide his cat ears. He twiddled with his fingers nervously as Ida stared at him. Midoriya Ida trailed off, adjusting his glasses as he inspected the top of Izuku's head. Am I seeing things? Yaoyorozu smiled at Izuku, as if to say she was going to take care of it. Oh, Ida, don't worry about the cat ears on the top of his head. Surely you heard the rumors by now, haven't you? I did, but I didn't think it was real. Ida admitted. None of us thought it was real, either. But sure enough, it is. Please don't tease him about it. Ida scrunched his face in confusion. Like I would do such a thing. I support my classmates in everything they do, because that is my duty as the president of Class 1A. And Izuku having cat ears is of no concern to me except, it looks cute. Izuku hid his face behind his hands. So multiple people were having the same first impression. How could he be that cute because of some stupid addition of cat ears? In all seriousness, just how cute could it make someone? Thanks for the compliment. Ida, Izuku said. Ida smiled and adjusted his glasses to appear serious. There's nothing to worry about, Izuku. Quirks can affect people in weird ways, so this isn't anything new. If others make fun of you for it, leave it to me to keep you look safe. Oh, thanks again, Izuku said, his cat ears flickering with some hope. Ida was about to answer, but the door opened to reveal the next barrage of people. Kaminari, Mineta, and Shiro joined the party to discover Izuku's cat ears while the rest of the girls from Class 1A shuffled in after them. Kaminari trailed off, putting a hand to his chin. I knew my eyes weren't playing tricks on me. You really have cat ears. Why didn't you confirm it sooner? No way the rumors have proven themselves now that I see them. Shiro said, walking toward him out of curiosity. Why is Midoriya still cosplaying? Mineta shouted, though the girls of Class 1A glaring at him with indignant looks silenced him in a heartbeat, until he opened his mouth a second later to defend himself. Okay, I said something wrong, but I'm not taking it back. It looks weird. Hey, wait. Stop. I said nothing wrong. While Shiro and Azui taped Mineta's mouth shut, Izuku's eyes tracked Kaminari and Jiro as they wandered his way to inspect his cat ears. For Jiro, it was the second time, but he digressed. Izuku gulped nervously as his cat ears imitated his sentiment and tilted down. Without hesitation, Kaminari touched the cat ears and marveled at the soft feeling. Izuku restrained himself to the best of his abilities to not rub against Kaminari's hand. Yo, can we hear the story of how this happened to you? I think it's safe to say everyone's curious about it. Kaminari exclaimed. I'm going to tell the story when everyone's here, so I don't have to repeat myself too many times. Izuku muttered, hoping Kaminari would stop. Oh yeah, that works, Kaminari said, still touching his cat ears, much to Izuku's chagrin. It wasn't until Jiro noticed Izuku's discomfort did she gently slap Kaminari's hand and berate him for annoying Izuku. Izuku reached to touch his cat ears to adjust them from the ruffle of Kaminari's fingers while gazing at an interesting, imaginary speck of dust on his desk. Their reactions to his cat ears weren't bad, but he knew the worst was yet to come. Would it be wrong to say he was talking about Bakugo? How was he going to react to his cat ears? Despite the bravery Izuku was displaying, he wanted to curl up and hide underneath his bed. It didn't take long before everyone filed in through the doors to Class 1A, their curiosity bouncing around the room, especially the boys. As predicted, he was the center of attention. Wow, their cat ears on top of his head, Sato said. Cuteness does not revel in darkness, Tokoimi said. Midoriya? I thought you only had one quirk. You never told me you possessed a second quirk. Todoroki said. Huh? And no, I never did. Izuku exclaimed, raising his hands to wave it in the air out of desperation. What? Come on, guys. No need to crowd poor Midoriya. You're going to overwhelm him with too many questions and statements. Ashido blurted, coming to his defense rather quickly. Yeah, and the more important question is how he got those cat ears. Tell us the story, Midoriya. Otherwise, I'm going to stick my great balls on your cat ears. Mineta shouted. Everyone stopped talking and stared at Mineta with disappointment. Whoa, dude, phrasing. Sato cried out. How did the tape come loose? Jiro asked, walking to Mineta's location with a fresh piece from Shiro. I licked it so I could speak. Now answer us, Midoriya. Mineta hollered, but protested when Jiro placed the tape over his mouth. Oh, wait. Don't close my mouth. I have a right to speak. MMPH. While everyone focused on Mineta's protests, Izuku snuck a peek at Bakugo. But the moment he did, he found his childhood friend staring daggers at him. Bakugo's look almost exterminated Izuku on the spot. Izuku panicked and averted his gaze, opting to stare at the very interesting floor. It was blue and vibrant, and very smooth. "So Midoriya, what is the story of how you got those cat ears?" Shoji asked, one of his tentacles forming a mouth to speak. "Oh yeah, you said you would tell the story when everyone was here. So what is it, Midoriya?" Kaminari asked. "Well, Izuku trailed off, glancing around himself. IIT happened on the day when I went to Mizuta City to buy some supplies and snacks. I ran into a criminal stealing a purse from a woman, and I gave chase. When I caught him, he threw a sparkly powder on my face, and you guys can see how that turned out, with everyone looking at me. It's difficult to go into detail since it's embarrassing, but this is the bare bones of the story." Ashido cut Izuku off, and he couldn't even be upset because she saved him from rambling. "And that's how we have a Midoriya with cat ears. And if anyone messes with him, looking at you, Bakugo, the MPS group will not hesitate to defend him at all costs," Ashido declared, a smug grin on her face as she stared at Bakugo. Bakugo uncrossed his arms and stared at Ashido with literal swords hurling from his eyes. The outburst of vulgar words he wanted to convey was evident from the way he grit his teeth. Luckily, Kirishima limited Bakugo from showering everyone with his filthy curses. "Hey, what's MPS? It sounds kind of manly," Kirishima said. "Midoriya Protection Squad. And I apologize, Kirishima, but we have a rule that only girls can join this group, because we think he looks the cutest this way." Ashido gushed as she reached to touch Izuku's cat ears with both hands. But she only got so far when Aizawa opened the doors to the classroom, forcing everyone to freeze from his presence alone. Pressure cratered on everyone's shoulders as Aizawa stared at every one of them with intensity. "Why is everyone standing around? Today is the first day of class back from work studies. Get in your seats and prepare to learn." "Yes, sensei," everyone said as they dispersed from Izuku to sit in their seats. "And Midoriya, I want to see you after the homeroom period is over," Aizawa said as he took attendance. "Why, sensei?" Izuku exclaimed. He could feel his heart sinking into his stomach in apprehension. Aizawa stood outside the hallway, staring at Izuku, who awkwardly avoided Aizawa's gaze until he spoke. "So it's true. They're real cat ears. I thought you were wearing a headband with cat ears when we went to Naitai's funeral, but my intuition told me you wouldn't disrespect him like that. And with an attempt, my quirk can erase them since they are physical incarnations of that man's quirk." "Right, so what do we do now, Aizawa-sensei?" Izuku asked. Aizawa covered his mouth with his hand as he pondered the situation. "As long as it interrupts nothing, then we're fine. I'll tell the other teachers about it, though they probably know. I don't want them surprised when they enter Class 1A to teach, wondering why your looks suddenly changed. That's about it." "Really?" "Yes, go back." Izuku nodded his head, but heard a familiar clack of heels hitting the floor. Izuku froze in place when he heard an alluring voice drift through the air, like a siren calling to a sailor. "Oh, I heard rumors of cat ears on a special student from several students in Class 1A, but I didn't think it would be Midoriya, of all people. He really is a troublesome child, isn't he?" Namiri sang as if she was serenading him. Izuku turned with rigid motions. "And Midnight Sensei?" She laughed and walked over to Izuku. Namiri lifted both her hands to experience his fluffy cat ears. Izuku squeezed his eyes shut, afraid of her touch and flirtatious personality, but the gentleness eased his eyes back open. Namiri's demeanor changed to take on a softer expression. "I knew your cat ears would be fluffy, but this is something new. It feels like my hands are melting into the fluff." Aizawa stood on the side with an expression that spelled he was done with Namiri's antics. "Midnight, get move on. Students are waiting inside Class 1A for you." "I know, but it's my turn to teach, so that means you have no authority here. Just leave it to me to do whatever I want with my students." Aizawa rolled his eyes. He nodded his head and walked down the hallway, prompting Izuku to look at Aizawa in shock and dismay. Aizawa-sensei, don't leave me alone." "Ah, you're like a stray cat longing for an owner. I can be that for you," Namiri said, her eyes throbbing with hearts. Izuku stared at Namiri with confusion and horror. What in the world did that mean? Over the next week, Nejiro found time to visit Izuku. She didn't need to do so, but given Nijiro's curiosity, she was bursting with anticipation to experiment with a newfound quirk that affected Izuku. So when Izuku opened the door to let her into his room for the third time, and he saw she had a myriad of different cat toys in her hands, something didn't feel right. Izuku tilted his head in confusion before his brain deciphered it. Still, he wanted to tiptoe around the idea suggested by her curiosity. And Nejiro? What are you doing with all those cat toys? Oh, I just have a few questions I want answers to. Nejiro responded, a smile dancing on her face. Now that was concerning. Not only did it validate Nijiro's intention, but it compelled Izuku to say something to avoid such a situation. Why you realize I'm not actually a cat, right? I don't think I'll be motivated to imitate a cat's behaviors just because of these ears. You know that, right? Izuku asked. I'm well aware, Nejiro sang, but clearly not listening. But from how you pushed your head against my hand while I scratched your ears was apparent. You behave identically to a cat, so I'm just excited to test it out. Maybe you have a heightened sense of smell or night vision, or maybe keen hearing. Guess we'll learn all that in due time, Izuku said. She looked for a place to place her cat toys and chose his bed, dropping them with a clatter. Then she turned to face him with a toy she specifically chose for the experiment. It was a jumble of feathers attached to the end of a cat wand. With a smile, she waved the toy in front of him and waited in anticipation for a reaction. When Izuku felt a need to leap at the toy, he knew Nijiro's experiment was anything but incorrect. While his newly found cat instincts told him to do what it wanted, his human analytical side battled against the quirk affecting him. It took everything to restrain himself from pouncing on the toy and playing with it. Nothing. That's interesting. I thought you would at least jump in my direction and try to play with it, Nejiro said, monitoring him before she giggled. Why, yup. Haha, no reaction from me, Izuku exclaimed nervously. However, his gaze remained fixed on the toy waving around in the air. It looked enticing. Dangerously so. Nejiro must have noticed because she stopped waving it and stared at Izuku. When she held it to the side, Izuku's eyes followed, much to his frustration, but to the satisfaction of Nejiro. She moved the cat wand to the other side and watched as Izuku's eyes pursued the jumble of feathers. Against his will, Izuku jumped toward the bundle of feathers and landed on his bed with dissatisfaction when Nejiro moved it away in time. Izuku turned and pounced on the toy again, but because Nejiro was there, he crashed into her. When the commotion settled and Izuku opened his eyes, he found himself on top of Nejiro. Izuku's vision swirled as millions of sequences flashed through his mind. Nejiro was going to report him to the teachers at UA High School, wasn't she? But it wasn't his fault. It was the dumb quirk of the criminal. Oh, and Nejiro, I'm so sorry. Oh gosh. Izuku stuttered, panicking at the possibility of being kicked out of UA High School. Nejiro just smiled at him. I guess you do have the instincts of a cat. Huh? Izuku stared into her eyes. Even if it was impossible to read someone's thoughts, Izuku felt like Nejiro wasn't angry at him in the slightest. Or maybe that was what he wanted to think. Izuku scrambled off Nijiro's body and stood on his 2 feet, averting her gaze while fidgeting with his fingers. Look, Nejiro, I didn't mean to. I did something messed up. I promise I won't do it again. So please don't report this to anyone. Nejiro stood and looked at him, rambling off with his apology. She interrupted him with a laugh. Don't you worry, Izuku. It was my fault, considering I goaded you with the cat toy. I will tell no one, and I'm the one that should apologize. So sorry and sure. Don't be telling everyone around you at high school you fell on top of someone so pretty, she said, putting a finger to her lips and winking at him. Izuku swallowed nervously, unsure how to feel. What she said was true, and it was even more embarrassing. Meanwhile, Nejiro put the cat toys underneath his bed to hide them from his eyes before she faced him again. So did you grow a tail yet? Nejiro asked, back to her normal self, despite the incident not even happening a minute ago. Yeah. Oh. Izuku trailed off as he reached behind his back, but his fingers felt nothing extraordinary. I don't think a tail is going to grow according to the quirk he affected me with. That's an odd detail to be missing though, right? Just cat ears and some instincts, but no tail. Do you think it'll grow later? Hey, you should text me if you grow a tail. Maybe this quirk works in phases. Text you? But I don't even have your phone number. Izuku asked. Oh, you want it? Nejiro asked, pulling her phone from her pocket. Is that okay? Of course. Here, put your phone number on my phone. I'll be the one to text you first when the time is right. Izuku had a feeling her last sentence was going to happen promptly. With hesitation, Izuku took Nejiro's phone in his hands and typed his name into her list of contacts. Once he pressed save, his name became permanently embedded in the phone of Nejiro Hado until she changed it, though she would carry her list of contacts to her next phone. It was an interesting thought to entertain. His name was on a girl's phone for a long time, and someone as cute as her, no less. It was madness, but then again, so was the quirk affecting him. Hey, Izuku. I heard the teachers found out about the cat ears on your head. How did Aizawa-sensei react when he saw the cat ears? What? Izuku didn't think anyone told Nejiro about Aizawa's reaction to his cat ears. So how did she know? How did you know? Nejiro smiled, but she hid the smile by holding her phone in front of her mouth. I have my sources. Izuku stared at her with curiosity. Someone was feeding Nejiro and midnight information about the journey of his cat ears. Though it was probably Hado. Well, he was pretty kind about it. Were you expecting something harsh? Nejiro giggled. Of course not. But I guess I expected him to be more harsh. I guess even Aizawa-sensei had a soft spot for someone who looks this cute with the addition of cat ears. See, could you stop calling me cute? It's embarrassing, Izuku protested as he covered his face with his hands. As a bonus for Nejiro, his cat ears flopped downwards. But you are cute. Just look at how cute you are. It makes me want to gobble you up. Izuku froze in place. Now, what in the world did that mean? Please don't. I jest Izuku. As he played with his pillow, Izuku lay on his bed, pondering the imminent future. First, he had the school festival, where he had to learn dance moves to put on the best show for the entire school and Eri. Then he had personal training with All Might along with improving the skill of his quirk. Finally, he had the potential of a cattail growing from behind to worry about. Was there anything else he was potentially missing? Oh, right. Other cat traits coming to the spotlight. That's what he was missing. But he didn't think night vision was something he was going to focus on since he would sleep during that period. Maybe some cat features were null as they clashed with his humanoid characteristics, but he still had some instincts. And Izuku wasn't keen on experimenting with himself since he had mixed feelings about the quirk affecting him, especially when he took Eri to explore the preparations for the upcoming school festival with Mirio. While Mirio was enthralled and touched his cat ears, Eri refrained, afraid it would bother Izuku, though she still thought it was cute. And when they met Nejiro Hado in the equipment room, things took a turn for the worse. Everyone was attracted to his cat ears. Even you liked them. Izuku would be lying if he said he wasn't burning with humiliation from head to toe. As for All Might, his reaction wasn't any different. He also thought it was cute. But because of their prolonged training session, All Might repeatedly acknowledged the way Izuku's cat ears moved when he went for intense moves. Another moment where his face burned with embarrassment. And now here he was, unaware if the cat-like attributes were going to occur, but so far, he didn't have to pick up the phone and text Nejiro about it. And that was for the better. But that still brought Izuku back to his key problem. Was there a reason a cat tail didn't grow? Izuku was sure it would happen eventually, but nothing materialized. At least for now. Is it because he only threw the powder on my face? Would that make sense? Izuku asked, sitting up on his bed before grabbing his notebook to write core fragments of information and piece it together like a puzzle. That would be the best explanation why I didn't grow a tail yet. So if I meet the criminal again, would that mean I would grow a tail if he threw it at my back? But I don't want to test it out by meeting him in person just to grow a cat tail. That would be mindless if it came true. Izuku grabbed his phone and wrote a small paragraph to Nejiro before he deleted it. How was he supposed to word it in a way that didn't sound urgent? And if she visited at this exact moment, didn't that mean she would mess around with him with more toys? Izuku paced around his room, planning the perfect paragraph, but the harder he strived, the worse it was to get something out of his brain. How do I write this without appearing weird or beckoning an invitation? Come to my dorm room. I figured out why I didn't grow a cattail. Doesn't that sound perverse? Izuku's brain transported him to the time he fell on top of her. With a grimace, Izuku didn't think inviting her to his room was the best idea. The incident was fresh in his mind, and it haunted him. He was afraid she was hiding her disgust for him. But this wasn't true. After all, Nejiro had texted him several times since then. The latest they talked to each other was a phone call 2 nights ago about his encounter with her in the equipment room. But it was more of a one-sided teasing party for Nejiro to poke fun at Izuku. Luckily, he kept most of the details for Class 1A's live concert under wraps for the big surprise as they continued talking. Izuku stared at his phone and wrote something before squeezing his eyes shut and sending the text. There was no turning back now. Izuku didn't know what he expected, but when he heard a knock at his balcony door a few minutes later, he thought it was Aoyama with cheese again. Fortunately, it was Nejiro. Her eagerness was a bit frightening. Nejiro? That was quick. Of course. When you text me something about the quirk that gives you cat traits, I'll be there in a few minutes at best. At worst, maybe 10 minutes. But what is it? You only sent me something about how you figured out the absence of your cattail. So what is it? What is it? Nejiro asked, floating into his room. So this might sound crazy, but I think I know why I don't have a cattail. It could be something to do with the location where the criminal threw the powder. From what I recall, he only threw it at my face, so that means it would only affect this area, right? Izuku circled his face with his hand and pointed at it. Nejiro put a finger on her face to consider his deduction with introspection as she studied his face. Because of her constant stare, Izuku averted her gaze to save himself from blushing in front of her. That makes total sense from what we've seen so far and tested. You also possess a portion of cat instincts like rubbing your head on hands and pouncing on enticing toys. And the powder technically reached your brain, since you most likely inhaled it, right? The word pouncing made Izuku grimace, but he nodded. But wouldn't that mean you would grow a cat nose and whiskers too? Or is the criminal's quirk very specific to cat ears, instincts, and tail? Has anyone caught the criminal? Maybe we could test it out by having him throw powder on you again, Nejiro said with a mischievous grin. I mean, we could Izuku cut himself off when he realized what she said, his cat ears following suit by perking on alert. Wait, what? No, let's not test it out in person. That's the last thing I want to do, and I don't even know if he got caught or not. I'm just kidding, Nejiro sang, landing on his bed and motioning for him to sit next to her. But it sucks that you won't be having a cattail. I was really looking forward to it, Fui. You were? But what's so special about a cattail? Izuku asked. He cautiously complied with her beckoning by sitting next to her. Well, I think it would look cute. Imagine if you had a cattail that swished back and forth every time I patted you on the head. Wouldn't that be so adorable? And I love cute things. You're already cute with the cat ears, but with the addition of cattail, you'd be triple the cuteness. Then what if I had no cat-like features on my body? I think you'd still be cute, Izuku. Like, look at you. You have messy, but soft hair. You're just as tall as me, though I'm sure you'll grow taller in a couple of years. And you're strong for what I recall when I saw you use your quirk multiple times. And your embarrassed reactions every time I tease you. You're just such an easy target. Didn't anyone tell you that? I'm not really. I don't think anyone from my class has a crush on me. Maybe Uraraka, but I think she's just a good friend. Well, I'm sure you'll find someone. Maybe someone like me. What? Don't know how to respond to that properly, Izuku said, trailing off. To make matters worse, his ears drooped down, displaying his sentiment. And they turned a shade of red at the end. You see what I mean? You're just so cute to tease, Nejiro exclaimed, cupping her hands over his face. And those cat ears just emphasize it to an unbearable degree. I just want to hug and cuddle with you. And gobble you up, haha. Didn't she say the same thing the last time they met in person? A drop of sweat rolled down Izuku's head as Nejiro shook his face by rubbing her hands back and forth with delicate aggression. Despite his yearning to look elsewhere because of his bashful behavior, he couldn't sense she locked his vision to look at her with her hands. With no choice left but to stare at her, Izuku could see Nejiro was enjoying it. Izuku felt something stir within his heart. He was developing an insane crush on her from the short time he spent with her. Was this the power of a cute airhead? Once Nejiro released his face, Izuku sat still and stared at her. At first, he wanted her to let go of him, but now he wanted her to keep touching his face. It was a weird thought to entertain, so Izuku shook his head to banish it. Anyway, you remember the phone call we had a few nights ago? I still have a few questions about your live concert you never revealed. And I know you're doing it on purpose, Izuku. I revealed everything to you so far about my dance rehearsal that we have been planning as we create it. So why can't you, HM? Nejiro asked. I don't want to spoil it when you watch it. Nejiro pouted and tugged on his sleeve. I won't be able to watch it because I'll be wrapped up with last-minute preparations. You know that, right? You are? Well, we don't have everything prepared, yet since the school festival is still a month away. I'm still curious about the details of your plans so far. Tell me, what is your specific role in the live concert? And who's playing the instruments? Are you going to be a major part of it? Well, so far, the band comprises Jiro, Kaminari, Tokoyami, Yairzu, and Bakugo. Jiro wrote the song first, allowing the dance squad to practice their dance moves ahead of time. Kirishima, Todoroki, Koda, Aoyama, and Siro make up the stage crew. The rest of Class 1A is part of the dance squad. So I'm going to be dancing. It's going to be weird doing it with the cat ears, but I don't think turning down an event all my classmates want to partake in is possible, and I want to see Eri smile. So everything's perfect, save for those cat ears, right? Nejiro asked, reaching to flick his cat ears with mirth. Izuku reared from Nejiro's touch, but she giggled and retracted her hand to her side. Anyway, so I'm not having a major part in the live concert like the others, but I'll let you know if anything changes. I think I can have someone record it, but I'll have to look into that later. Then I look forward to seeing it in video form, though it won't be going to the experience in person. Speaking of which, I better see you at the beauty pageant for my event. I know my event's after you guys. I'm weighing the complicated details with Yu, Mirio, and Tamaki, but it's going to be great. I'm going to make sure I take the prize home this year with everything I've got within the legal limits I've been given. So keep your eyes on me. Izuku smiled, acknowledging Nejiro's excitement. Though you won't be there to see the live concert, I'll be there for you to see the beauty pageant. Nejiro stared at him for several seconds before she hugged him, taking him by surprise. I look forward to it, Izuku. Gah! Izuku yelped. It took a second to process, but once Izuku realized he was embracing one of the most beautiful girls in the entire school, his heart almost beat out of his chest. There's no way this was real life, was it? One pinch told him the opposite. The day Izuku discovered he had been kicked from the dance squad, his first instinct was to think about Eri and his promise to her. Fortunately, it wasn't something he had to worry about for long since he could still dance, but for a brief time, so the promise with Eri wasn't completely void. The next thing he thought was how he would spill the beans to Nejiro Hado. It was easier to respond to someone who was always asking him questions and initiating conversations, but things fell apart when he had to be the one to start it, unless it was about quirks. But this news wasn't about quirks. It wasn't a simple task to text a beautiful girl like her, but he was hoping it would get easier as time went on. And if it didn't, well, one could hope. Izuku paced around his room, employing every brain cell to think of something. If he texted something first, would she come flying to his room again since they hadn't seen each other in a while because of their busy schedules? Izuku collapsed on his bed in exhaustion after he sent the message to her, estimating there was nothing to lose other than being graced by Nejiro Hado's presence. And if something embarrassing happened, at least there wasn't anyone around to rub salt in the wound. As Izuku predicted, Nejiro came flying to his room outside the balcony. The expected knock echoed throughout his room, alerting him to her arrival. Izuku pulled the curtains and opened the door to allow Nejiro into his room, where she sat on his bed with impatience. I have to say, I'm worried about how quickly you come to my room when I give you updates, and I feel bad because I feel like I'm forcing you to come over every time. Nah, you're fine. I just want to see my favorite person in the world and pat you on the head. Feels like you're gatekeeping me from your cat ears, don't you think? Nejiro asked, her smile brimming with mirth. They are connected to my body after all, Izuku said, sitting next to her without an invitation. Nejiro laughed. Right, so that would mean I need to ask for permission to touch your cat ears. I wouldn't want to cross boundaries on you like that. And every time I reached for your head, it seemed like you didn't want it. Izuku laughed, but teetered off as nervousness took hold of him. Right, B, but I'm not opposed to it. Silence flowed into their conversation. An awkward silence. Izuku glanced at her several times, but every time he did, their eyes met. Then her eyes focused on the top of his head. Despite the time Nejiro said she would still find him adorable with no cat features, her behavior seemed to tell him otherwise. If the cat ears disappeared, would they still have conversations like this? Izuku shook his head, unwilling to lean toward that theory. He was here now, and he was enjoying the conversations he was having with her. That was enough, wasn't it? However, Izuku didn't know if he could expel the lingering thoughts of it. It was going to be difficult and maybe a question saved for the future. For now, the way Nejiro stared at his cat ears couldn't be saved for the future, so Izuku let her indulge. Hey, Nejiro, you can touch my cat ears. Oh wow, really? Nejiro asked. I don't know what I did to deserve this. Thank you. I mean, you kept staring at my cat ears. Nejiro bumped into his shoulder playfully. That was a joke with a hint of sarcasm. IIT was? Sorry, my mind seems to be too busy to understand them, huh? Nejiro giggled, and then hummed to herself in satisfaction as she reached to touch his cat ears. The way her warm fingers nipped at his cat ears and rubbed them sent shivers of joy down Izuku's spine. It never got old no matter who touched it. However, the feeling was more prevalent with the opposite gender. Anyway, so what was the update you wanted to tell me about for the live concert you guys are performing? Is it something bad? Is it going to enhance or ruin the performance? Nejiro asked, going through her usual barrage of questions before waiting for his answer. It's nothing too bad. Today, I received word they kicked me from the dance squad to assist the stage crew. I still get to dance, but for a very short time. I knew I had to tell you about it, since you wanted to know all the details. That's a major update. So what is your role for the stage crew? Since nobody is strong enough to hold Aoyama up as the disco ball across the dance floor, I have to be the one to do it. I'm going to be running across the steel support beams on the ceiling to do it. That sounds fun. I wish I got to do something like that in my first year. Instead, I joined a beauty pageant in my first year, and every year has been the same after that, so I've never really had the chance to collaborate with my classmates to do something grand like that. But I think the beauty pageant is something I like to do because everyone supports me and want me to do my best there, so it felt right to go there for my second and third year. But when that recording comes out of your live concert, let's watch it together in your room. Got it? Okay, Izuku said. Anyway, I don't know why I rushed over here when I could have texted you. I just really missed you, I guess. And miss me? Izuku asked with a blush. Yup, that's the reaction I wanted, Anyway, I'll catch you later, okay? And thanks for the update. Izuku was about to wave his hands at her when she spun around to face him. A hint of panic rippled through his body, but he patiently waited for her to dig something out of her pocket. Wait, before I go, I want you to have this special thing I made specifically for you. I figured I could put my hobby of knitting to good use by making you something that'll help you during the colder months. Nejiro said. Nejiro held the object up, presenting a weird shape to him. Izuku looked at it with a blank expression. Is that a hat for my cat ears? No, it's a hat that also accommodates your cat ears by giving them their own room. So it's a combo. Think about it. Wouldn't it be cold if you had your cat ears exposed? And doesn't it get uncomfortable when you put on a regular hat because your cat ears get squished? So this is where a custom-made hat can serve you best. Tada! Izuku accepted it and stared at it for several seconds. When he looked at Nejiro, Izuku found it hard to say no. After all, she had created it with his convenience in mind. Thanks, I didn't expect this, but I'll use it when the time comes. No need to thank me. I enjoy knitting in my free time, but it feels good to see the smiles of others when you create something for them. Wear it. I want to see if I made it too big or too small for you. Embarrassed, Izuku almost declined her, but her enthusiastic anticipation changed his mind. Izuku unfurled the winter hat and studied it from his perspective. The winter hat had two pointy cones on top for his cat ears and a scarf attached at the bottom for his neck. As Izuku wore it, Nejiro helped him with the scarf by wrapping it comfortably around his neck. Izuku watched in surprise, but accepted her help with his heart beating just a little quicker. While he patiently waited for her to finish, he couldn't help but feel a gentle and cozy sensation spreading around the back of his head. Nejiro stepped back and examined him once she was done. How do I look? Izuku asked. Well, I'm biased, but I think you look great. And so cute. How about you? How does it feel? Too tight? Too loose? I think it fits perfectly. It feels nice too. Phew, that's good to hear. Then does that mean I can touch your cat ears as a reward whenever I want? Sure. Nejiro giggled and shook her head. I jest, but I'm glad I guesstimated your size correctly. If your cat ears stay for longer, get ready for an influx of more hats, because now I want to make more. I think one is fine. You don't have a choice in this, because I'm going to make you so many cute designs. And this will be good practice to improve my knitting skills. Nejiro exclaimed, pulling her phone to take a picture of him. Hey, Izuku, over here. Huh? Izuku didn't have time to process what happened next, as Nejiro took a picture of him. Nejiro paused, processing the photo she captured before revealing it to him. I'm going to make this my wallpaper, Nejiro stated. Please don't you. Too late. Nejiro sang with a smile. Izuku observed her, smiling, while she stared at the photo again. He found it difficult to stop her, especially with a smile like hers. Anyway, I'll be going. And when I come back, I'll be back with another hat. Mark my words. Your cat ears will never know what it means to be cold. Nejiro exclaimed. Nejiro waved her hand and flew off into the distance. Izuku returned the wave and watched her fly in the direction where the Class 3A dorms were. Once she disappeared from view, Izuku adjusted the hat to his liking before he found 2 strings dangling from either side of his face. Izuku's vision focused on the strings. The urge to bat them was undeniable. As the live concert practices and personal training lessons with All Might flew by, the days blended into happier moments. It was nice to experience the joys of life after all he had gone through in recent times. But at some point, the other shoe had to drop. Not in a horrifying way, but in a head-and-want-to-meet Bakugo way. It happened one Saturday afternoon while they were practicing and had split for a brief lunch break. They were going to reconvene at a later time once they satisfied their rumbling, empty stomachs. With a bowl of his favorite food from the cafeteria, Izuku walked back to the dorm to sit on the staircase while the others ate at the cafeteria. When he heard a pair of footsteps making their way to his location, he groaned inwardly. At first, he thought it was one of the girls from his class coming over to pat his head, but the moment he made eye contact with the newcomer, his body stopped functioning. Kate Kakin? Bakugo didn't answer as he sat on the opposite side of the stairs. His presence alone made Izuku feel like he had to sprint, like a predator hunting him. And he was the prey. The silence only made it worse. And he didn't want to say something to incur his wrath further. Izuku stood from his seat and was about to escape when he heard Bakugo telling him to stop. Izuku's eyes darted around the area, searching for an escape before he turned to face Bakugo. Don't kill me. I know these cat ears are cute according to everybody, but not everyone had to agree. To know you don't agree, but that's fine. You see. Shut up. Who said anything about your damn cat ears? Do you think I came all the way over here to talk about your cat ears? Sit down. I have a question to ask. Izuku averted Bakugo's gaze, his cat ears following suit by slumping downwards. Izuku sat down in his original spot with dread at what was about to unfold. In the awkward silence that followed, Izuku's cat ears trembled from side to side in anticipation. His favorite bowl of katsudan didn't seem appetizing anymore. Your cat ears look stupid, you know that? Where the hell did you get them? A thrift store that sells cheap costumes? Izuku glanced at Bakugo in bewilderment. What? Who starts a conversation like that? And didn't you say you would not talk about my cat ears? Just answer the damn questions, nerd. Bakugo said, his expression darkening as a crackle of explosions threatened Izuku's life. Izuku panicked. His ears shot straight up in alarm at the threat he received. He didn't know what to say. Bakugo said it wasn't about the cat ears, and suddenly, it was about the cat ears. It made little sense, didn't it? Look, Kakin, these cat ears aren't that important, and you already heard the story inside the classroom while everyone was there. I am a victim here, okay? Izuku said. He was trying to earn some pity points, but it didn't seem like Bakugo understood. In fact, he looked angrier than usual, and Izuku didn't know how to handle it. No matter what he said, Bakugo was going to hate him for something, wasn't he? You're pathetic, Deku. Do you think I don't know that you're talking to Nejiro Hado? The boys' side of the dorm literally faces the same way she flies over to enter your damn room. You stupid dork. Bakugo shouted, walking to Izuku's location. I bet all of Class 1A knows that you're dating her at this point. Dating her? Bakugo, you have it all twisted. I just talked to her. That's it. Izuku protested. Bakugo was switching subjects like crazy. That wasn't a good sign. Izuku backed away, but found himself unable to phase past the railing. As a result, Izuku stopped talking and squeezed his eyes shut while his cat ears dropped flat on his head. At this point, Izuku was just hoping for the best. Bakugo stopped, his expression twisting into perplexity as he stared at the cat ears. A moment passed by until Bakugo reached over and tugged on them. And not a gentle tug like the others who touched it. Bakugo pulled on them, threatening to rip them from the top of Izuku's head. Ow, ow, ow. Kakin, they're real. I told you. Stop pulling on them like that. Izuku exclaimed, a note of panic shining through his yelp. But Bakugo didn't stop. Instead, he tugged them one way and then the other way, forcing Izuku to follow him. Despite all the protests and reasons Izuku tried to make, Bakugo didn't listen. Instead, he frowned and rubbed them to double-check his doubts. Damn, they really are real, Bakugo mumbled. Midoriya Protection Squad is here. Let him go, fiend. Hado shouted. The two boys froze as they both made eye contact with the girls of Class 1A. Hado winked at Izuku and pointed a finger at Bakugo. Despite the awkward introduction, it was a relief to see the six of them come to his rescue. And none of them seemed too happy with Bakugo yanking on his cat ears. Seizing the opportunity created by the distraction, Izuku slipped out of Bakugo's clutches and stumbled towards the girls, seeking their protection. They accommodated his entry. As he successfully integrated himself into the group, he stuck his head out from behind the back of Yaoyorozu to look at Bakugo from a safe distance. What are you trying to do to him? Hado asked. You thought the Midoriya Protection Squad takes a break? We work 24/7 to protect our cute kitten. Kitten? Izuku echoed. Bakugo glared at them and then at Izuku with the most venomous stare he had ever seen. Bakugo shoved his hands in his pocket and turned his back on them. What the hell is a Midoriya Protection Squad? Whatever. I don't care enough to learn the stupid answer to that. The cat ears don't make him cuter. You guys are just brain dead, which means you actually like them, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't state something you hate so obviously. Hado pointed out. How the hell did you conclude that? Bakugo roared, his hands sizzling with pops and crackles. Perhaps this group should be renamed to something akin to Protect Midoriya from Bakugunli Squad, Yaoyorozu noted. But that doesn't roll off the tongue, does it? Jiro asked. Both sounds odd. Yeah, that sounds like a troublesome acronym to say, Uraraka said. We should ask Midoriya what he wants the group to be renamed to. Karo. Azui commented. The girls of Class 1A stared at him, except for Hado. The voice of Bakugo's shouts rambled on in the background as he dealt with the preposterous accusations from Hado, but it wasn't enough to drown out the stares of the girls for Izuku. But there was only one question on Izuku's mind. What did Hado mean by kitten? Izuku asked. Seated at his desk, Izuku worked on the homework his teachers had given him earlier that day. Despite his intelligence, it consumed time amidst his busy schedule. But by now, the constant scribbling of his pencil exhausted Izuku, prompting him to yearn for a break. He needed something to take his mind off the work and release the stress from his mind before he returned to his assignments. Izuku looked outside and studied the world. A light bulb lit above his head. Izuku stood from his chair and wandered to his dresser to wear clothes to venture outside. After wearing something warm, Izuku checked himself in the mirror before his eyes concentrated on the cat ears on top of his head. Izuku reached up and flicked them. He winced in pain. He didn't know what he expected, but he should have known it would cause an unpleasant sensation. I guess it's still there, Izuku muttered. At least, I don't have a cat tail, saves me from getting a heart attack from my embarrassment. Like, the cat ears are already bad enough for me. With a shrug, Izuku stored the problem in the back of his mind. It wasn't like regretting it was going to do him any good. Izuku walked to his dresser to get a winter hat. But as he dug around, Izuku's vision locked eyes with a winter hat Nejiro knit for him. Like people said, ignorance was bliss. Izuku grabbed a normal one and wore it, But it was like Nejiro predicted. The winter hat compressed his cat ears into an uncomfortable position. With a sigh, Izuku looked back at the hat she knit for him. He stared at it for several seconds before he picked it up. Izuku shrugged his shoulders and stuffed the hat into his coat pocket. There wasn't a chance he was walking out of his room with the hat on his head. He also wanted to keep his friendly relationship with Nejiro's secret, so if his classmates asked him who knitted the hat for him, it would be difficult to lie to them. It was ironic, considering Bakugo was already aware of it. But it was in Izuku's best interests no one else knew. If Mineta knew about it, Izuku didn't want to see what would happen next, seeing how Mineta had a perverted, tainted soul. All Izuku could say was it was a frightening thought to entertain. Bone-shivering, teeth-chattering, and knee-shaking thought. On his way out, Izuku greeted his classmates and headed outside. The moment he did, the frigid air grasped his face and offered him a gentle but icy kiss. Even with the coat and layers he wore, he shivered from the bitter breeze and stuffed his hands in his pockets. Izuku felt something fuzzy inside his pocket. He pulled the hat Nejiro made for him. I should wear it now. With precision, Izuku unfastened the scarf from the hat and wrapped it around his neck, feeling its fuzziness against his skin. After securing the scarf, he adjusted the hat on his head and positioned his cat ears snugly. He wiggled his cat ears and deemed it comfortable to continue walking without adjusting it further. It felt like a warm hug. Despite the embarrassment he experienced, it was the perfect gift from Nejiro. A part of him couldn't wait for the next winter hat she would bring to him. It also served as a distant memory of Nejiro when she wasn't around. It even had a delicate smell to it. The faint scent of perfume wafted to his nose. It carried the same aroma he experienced the first time he met her. And this time he felt he could relate it to something, the smell of a pear. Izuku snuggled against the scarf and settled deep into the fuzz of the wool to protect himself from the cold. As he continued walking, he noted other students walking along the path. But the rarity of people present in the frosty weather created a pleasant space of serenity for him. In the space of tranquility, his thoughts led him to think of Nejiro. Perhaps the faint perfume was a powerful influencer. With the little time he spent with her, it was interesting he received a gift from her, and from the most beautiful girl in the school, no less. Not that he was bragging or anything, but it was just that interesting. The way she smiled, the way she teased him, and the way she touched his cat ears with bliss in her expression. It made him feel like he was special. There was no other way to put it. Like he was the only person on the planet that she cared about. But his doubts had a convincing argument to counter him. Surely, Nejiro was doing it because he had adorable cat ears. Despite what she might say, he couldn't completely trust her. It was difficult too, especially with the way his childhood molded him. He believed he would be friends with Bakugo forever, but he was pushed to the side simply because he didn't have a quirk. And what if she had a boyfriend? It wasn't far-fetched to say she had someone special after spending 3 years at UA High School with her attractiveness. With a sigh, Izuku sat on a nearby bench under a streetlight. Like the first night he met her, his mind was stirring a storm of thoughts. Izuku fiddled with his fingers and studied the designs on his gloves. It wasn't particularly interesting, but it helped him take his mind off the swirling blizzard of thoughts and questions. Izuku closed his eyes for a moment, hoping meditation would work, but his fatigue took over. In the distance, he heard a whoosh. He felt a familiar feeling encroach on his heart. He opened his eyes to the sight of an angel in front of him. An angel? That didn't seem right. He didn't recall anyone with an angel quirk at UA High School. Izuku rubbed his eyes and stared at Nejiro, who tilted her head side to side out of concern. Izuku blinked twice, glancing around himself to double-check his surroundings before he stared straight into Nejiro's worried expression. Izuku? What are you doing out here all alone? Isn't it cold? What if you catch an illness? That wouldn't be good for you. And were you trying to sleep? Nejiro said, hovering in front of him. Oh, sorry. And no, I wasn't trying to sleep. I was just thinking and closed my eyes for a minute or two. Izuku said, and what are you doing out here? Man, I got bored with staying inside all day, but I didn't think I would run into you like this. Can I hang out in your room? Unfortunately, I have homework to do. Then can I take you back to your room? After all, what would we do if you got sick? There's nothing to worry about. I have your hat to protect me from the cold, right? Nejiro pouted and crossed her arms over her chest. That's not an excuse to be outside like this. I thought you were actually asleep. Yeah, I guess you're right. I'm sorry. Nejiro's pout disappeared as soon as it arrived. Slivers of compassion crossed her expression as she unfolded her arms. Hey, if you get sick, give me a call because I'll nurse you back to full health. I think I'll be fine, Nejiro, but thanks for the offer, Izuku said, his heartbeat bolting to the heavens. With a glance at his phone, Izuku's heart soared past the heavens when he noted the time. Oh, I have to get going. I didn't realize it was this late. Izuku scrambled to sprint to his dorm, but when he heard the voice of Nejiro, he stopped. Wait, Izuku. Is there something you need? Under the street light of the pathway, Nejiro smiled and floated toward him. I'm glad you wore the hat I knitted for you. Oh, right, it's really nice and feels good against my cat ears. Thanks for the hat, Nejiro. It means a lot since I tried to wear a normal winter hat, and it didn't work. It was as you said, it squished my ears to an awkward position. Izuku said. Nejiro giggled. The pleasure is all mine. Anyway, I know I said last time that I would bring another hat for you when we met each other, but I'm still working on the design for it, along with you. And I didn't predict to meet you so soon. So expect to see it sometime early next week. Well, knowing how busy you are right now, I'll let you go. Bye, Izuku, she said, waving her hand. See you around, Nejiro. Izuku waved his hand back at her and continued to sprint. Along the way to his room, a twinge of guilt sparked in his heart, but he ignored it to focus on the task at hand, his homework. A part of him whispered thoughts he left her alone too hastily. Another part of him told him it was inevitable because of his time restraint. Despite his yearning to spend more time with Nejiro, he was busy. The least he could do to compromise the turmoil in his brain was to offer an apology to her when they met again. In the meantime, homework called his name. There was the problem. Izuku didn't have time to meet with Nejiro as the date for the school festival approached, and their schedules turned hectic. However, Nejiro had time to text him. Mostly, it was about the updates on her dance routine for the beauty pageant. Other times, it was about his cat ears. Obviously, when the day of the school festival arrived, many problems arose. The frayed rope seemed to be the culprit, leading Izuku to meet Gentle and La Brava and almost miss his involvement in the live concert. While battling Gentle and La Brava, they noticed his cat ears. It was embarrassing. Izuku didn't want to imagine what would happen if he met the League of Villains again with the cat ears. But truth be told, that was the least of his problems. They went into hiding after the overhaul debacle that unfolded a few weeks ago. But he wasn't worried, considering Eri smiled for the first time and Nejiro flawlessly performed her dance in the sky at the beauty pageant with her quirk adding to the display. Izuku rested his head on his arm, rewatching the live concert his classmates had exerted great effort to achieve while his cat ears wiggled in excitement. He replayed it over and over, listening to the song and reviewing every single distinction until it was etched in his mind. All Might had been the one to record the video on Izuku's phone for him at his request. Of course, Izuku didn't tell All Might he wanted a recording because of the promise he made with Nejiro, but the compromise was that he was saving it for memories and showing Eri whenever she wanted to see it. It was like an onion. Layered answers. Suddenly, a text message fizzled into view from the top of his phone screen. Izuku used his thumb to click on the message and read it. I'm nearing your dorm room, Izuku repeated, only to be interrupted by a knock at his balcony door. Izuku perked up and stared at his balcony. He stood from his chair and pulled the curtains back to reveal Nejiro standing outside. She waved her hand at him and smiled. Expected, but what he didn't expect was Nejiro to be in her pajamas. It exhibited her in a distinct style compared to her school uniform. Dare he say it? It made her look more adorable than she already was. With his heart quickening its pace, Izuku opened the door, allowing Nejiro to step inside. Meanwhile, Izuku poked his head out, anxiously surveying his surroundings. The words Bakugo said last time fueled his uneasiness. When he was satisfied with the absence of anyone's presence, Izuku closed the door and turned around. Izuku yipped as Nejiro embraced him out of the blue. Her arms wrapped around him, enveloping him with her warmth. Izuku stumbled back, uncertain what to do next. And Nejiro? Why are you hugging me? Izuku asked. Well, I heard you made Eri smile for the first time since she left the shadow of Overhaul. Don't you think that's a wonderful thing you achieved? You did something good, Izuku. Come here, you deserve something nice. Nejiro exclaimed, caressing his cat ears. Izuku closed his eyes, relishing her touch. The undeniable emotions it bestowed upon him stirred his heart with warm fuzziness. When Nejiro finished touching Izuku's cat ears to her satisfaction, she retracted her hand to her side and smiled. Thanks, Nejiro, but I have to say something. Do you remember the time when you found me outside? I just wanted to say I'm sorry for cutting our time short on that occasion. Nejiro raised an eyebrow at him. What makes you say that? Well, I didn't want to appear rude, and just in case I hurt your feelings, I wanted to express my apologies to you. Because, I just felt like at that time, I insulted you by running away to do my homework instead of transitioning to something more smooth that could end the conversation satisfactorily. And Izuku trailed off. He was rambling, wasn't he? A smile spread over Nejiro's expression as she hummed a tune in contentment. Oh, that's something to add to the list that makes me fall in love with you every time we meet each other. You're so kind, she sang. What? Fall in love? He got you, Nejiro exclaimed, giggling at his reaction. However, there was a hint of softness in her laugh. Like I said before, you're too easy to tease. Like a little kitten. All the questions inside Izuku's brain bounced around, forcing the sides of his head to hurt. It was difficult to understand what she was trying to say. Still, it was nice to spend time with her, despite the uncertainty about his future with her. Cools tried to spend as much time with him as possible just because he had cat ears. A shallow reason for sure, but something that gave him benefits like the Class 1A girls and Nejiro adoring him. It was a little weird. He didn't like it at the moment, but with a little more thought, Izuku couldn't deny he liked the attention. It was embarrassing. He was thinking like an elementary school student who had a massive crush on someone. It was a work in progress on how to feel. Speaking of which, here's your reward for making Eri smile. Izuku looked as Nejiro reached into her pajama pocket and pulled out the newly finished cat hat. She held it in her hands, waiting eagerly for his reaction. I don't think I need a reward since I'm a hero. I do kind things out of the goodness of my heart. Otherwise, it would tarnish the meaning of being a genuine hero. Right? Nejiro giggled, handing the hat to him. Just because you're a sacrificial hero doesn't mean you can't get treated to some good things. I remember this one time, I saved someone during one of my hero work studies with Ryuko, and they wrote me a letter telling me how much it meant to them, and that they wanted to be just like me. It's something I cherish to this day. Izuku's eyes widened. It was something that happened to him a while ago. Koda wrote a letter to him. Izuku wasn't trying to be selfish, but it was easy to forget that UA High School trained some of the best heroes around Japan, ensuring others would also get letters of appreciation. Nejiro was no exception. Yeah, I had something similar to that, Izuku said, accepting the hat in his hands. See, being a genuine hero doesn't have to be all doom and gloom. You can still enjoy life, but with saving lives, that just has to be at the forefront. I guess so. What do you mean you guess so? Be confident in your answer. Nejiro teased, tapping him on the chest. I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm not as confident as you, Izuku said, trying his best to hide his blush. The tap on his chest didn't go unnoticed. Nejiro gave him a warm smile. Yeah, I noticed. You only turn confident when you want to save lives, right? That's not a bad thing, but it would be nice to build up your casual image and not only your heroic reputation. Do you want to teach you how? Oh, that's actually the perfect idea. I can teach you how to be confident. You know how to make others more confident? Izuku asked, tilting his head. Nope, but I'll just teach you what I know, Nejiro exclaimed with a laugh. Izuku chuckled along with her, though it didn't last long. He cleared his throat, searching for a topic to fill the silence. As his eyes flickered around, his eyes landed on his phone at his desk. Nejiro, did you want to watch the recording of a live concert? Hey, I forgot about that. Let's watch it right now. We can. Izuku walked to his desk and picked his phone up. When he turned to walk to his bed, he noticed Nejiro already there, eagerly awaiting his presence. And so, Izuku sat beside her at their convenience and played the video for her. Throughout the video, Nejiro riveted Izuku's attention. What could he say? It was embarrassing. It was akin to hearing his own recorded voice. Or when he tripped in the middle of the hallway and there were several cute girls behind him. Lost in his thoughts, Izuku panicked when he felt something touch his shoulder. Izuku found Nejiro's head on him. As his heart pounded loudly in his ear and against his rib cage, he could feel the vibrations throughout his body. Tiny beads of sweat formed around his head and his hands grew cold. His breath quickened at the pace of his heart, though he tried to hide it to the best of his ability. With the help of several deep breaths, Izuku attempted to calm his mind to a manageable tempo, but it didn't work. Instead, it had the opposite effect. His mind and heart raced to the ends of the earth. As the video ended, Izuku glanced in Nejiro's direction. Her silence compelled Izuku to feel uncertain about her opinion until she faced him with enthusiasm. That was amazing. I can see why Eri smiled because it was just wow. I'm speechless. That's a first. How did you guys pull that off in 1 month? And I thought my dance for the beauty pageant was difficult, but your entire class achieved it flawlessly. Well, it was mostly because of the girls. We had Jiro as the main band leader, Hado as the dance squad leader, and the stage crew had some brilliant minds. I don't know who the leader was there, but it seemed like Todoroki supplied most of the ideas. He was the one who suggested we perform like a concert would. Nejiro nodded her head. But if I'm being honest, I have one complaint. You do? His heart skipped a beat. Yup. My one complaint is you didn't stick around long enough. You disappeared too quickly. They promised you front and center stage, but then switched you to a stage crew member. Not fair. Nejiro said with a pout. Well, I wouldn't say front and center stage, but the stage crew needed my help, so I was happy to lend a hand. At least I was there for a part of it. Much shorter than I thought it was going to be next year. Tell your classmates you want a bigger part because you sacrificed your stage presence this year. But since most of the stage crew were hidden, I don't think I can complain. Phooey, you bring up a good point. Besides, it was already embarrassing that I had to display my cat ears to everyone. I wish I was part of the stage crew the entire time, but I wanted to make Eri smile, so I knew I had to be up there dancing for however short a time it was. And I'm glad I did, but still I want to crawl in a hole. Izuku said, hiding his face behind his hands. Nejiro leaned forward, trying to enter Izuku's line of vision before she laughed. Oh, look at you. Doing it for Eri, despite the embarrassment. That's why I hugged you. But now that everyone knows that you have cat ears, they're going to want to touch it, right? Well, I'm going to make sure I'm the only one who touches them. Don't let them touch your cat ears without permission, got it? Because it's all mine. What? Then what about my classmates? The girls like it too. Nejiro put a finger to her chin and thought about it. Since they're your classmates, they're excused, but anyone else will have to go through me. Well, as long as I'm around you, which will not be much. You don't have to work so hard, if you didn't know already. Hado already created a group specifically to protect me from anyone who tries to bully me for my cat ears. It's called Nevermind. It's kind of embarrassing to say. Izuku said. However, Izuku should have known this would create the perfect opportunity for Nejiro to seize her opportunity to tease him. Nejiro stared at him with interest until a mischievous smile crossed her face. Now you have my full attention. What is it called? It's called, oh gosh. It's called the Midoriya Protection Squad. Izuku said, his cat ears replicating his humiliation by turning red. MPS for short. Nejiro blinked twice at the name and giggled. Such a simple name embarrassed you? No worries. Maybe if I was also in your shoes, I would be too. Hey, could you put in a good word for me to them so I can join the group? I would love to take part. I think 6 people following me around is enough. Nejiro pouted and puffed her cheeks out. Oh, come on. I want to join part-time. Please? Why was she treating the prospect of protecting him like a job? As the end of November neared the students of UA High School, Izuku's studying and training consumed his time. Despite the times they met in Izuku's dorm room, it became sparse. Not that it was bad, but a sense of loneliness instilled itself within him. When Eri was admitted to the care of Aizawa and UA High School, Nejiro took the mantle of being a big sister to her. This eventually led the 3 to a nearby park to give Eri time to play as a normal child. Izuku recognized the rational reason they were there, but it was odd being the only male there on a late Saturday afternoon. Wasn't Mirio supposed to be the caretaker for Eri? Did Nejiro pull some strings? But seriously, where was Mirio? Izuku sat on the bench and stuffed his hands in his coat pockets to keep them warm. The gloves he wore did little to protect him from the frigid air. Luckily, the wool winter hat Nejiro made for him was the perfect remedy for the icy wind. And for his cat ears, Izuku observed the way Eri smiled as Nejiro played a game of tag with her. However, it evolved into a game of hide and seek. Somehow, he was able to avoid partaking in their game, but he was sure they were going to try again. For now, he was enjoying the part where he was spectating. Nejiro put a finger on her chin as she hovered across the area. I might wonder where Eri is. I can't seem to find her in this vast playground. Eri couldn't help but giggle, giving her position away from underneath the platform of a structure leading to a slide. But Nejiro pretended to be oblivious as she continued to drift around the premises, searching for Eri. Hey, I heard a laugh coming from somewhere, Nejiro said, a mischievous smile crossing her face. Eri giggled again. Nejiro turned and stared at the wrong area of the playground intentionally. That's weird. I swear I heard a laugh from over there. Nejiro floated higher into the sky, urging Eri to wonder where she disappeared. Eri poked her head from underneath the playground and looked up in confusion. From Izuku's perspective, he could see Nejiro descending from the air in Eri's blind spot, upside down. Nejiro glanced at him and lifted a finger to her lips. Izuku smiled and nodded his head before he looked elsewhere, in case Eri looked at him for any hints. He would not ruin the moment of serenity between the two of them. Once Nejiro made it to her desired position without being spotted by Eri, she popped into Eri's vision. Boo! Nejiro exclaimed, opening her hands to add effect. Ah! Eri shrieked. She fell on her back in surprise before laughter followed. Nejiro joined in Eri's amusement and floated underneath the playground to help Eri onto her feet and pat the debris off her coat. So that's where you hid. You're so good at hiding from a hide-and-seek champion. Whoa, really? You were a champion? Eri asked. Of course. How do you think I found you? Nejiro said, tapping Eri on the nose. Anyway, stay right here. I'm going to go get big brother Izuku to join us. I think he looks a little lonely there all by himself. Don't you think? Okay, Eri said. Izuku perked up when he heard his name being mentioned and refocused his vision on Nejiro. Then he stared at Eri. From the way Eri emanated with joy, it was obvious to tell she was enjoying her time with Nejiro. It was a blessing to his heart. Eri certainly looked happy. It was like her grim past with Overhaul never happened. Hey, Izuku, what are you doing here all alone? Don't you want to join us? Nejiro asked. Yeah, in a bit. Is there something wrong? Oh no, there's nothing wrong. I was just thinking I think Eri likes you a lot. Nejiro grinned and glanced at Eri, who was staring at a couple of birds chattering to each other. Well, she's a cute little girl, and I think as a hero, my tendency is to care for her, especially when Aizawa-sensei placed her in our trust. I wouldn't want anything bad to happen to her ever since she went through we know what she went through. Now she deserves some rest and fun, and I can say the same to you. Eri likes you a lot, too. Also, you need to have some fun, too. Haha, I'm sure I do morning training took a bit out of me. I'll join now, Izuku said without moving. Silence entered their conversation as they both looked at Eri, who pointed at the birds and peered at them. Eri inched a little closer, but they flew away once they noticed her presence closer than before. Eri watched them land on a tree and disappear as they hopped into the maze of branches. Nejiro looked at Izuku and smirked. Hey, so, do you think this makes us a couple right now? Did he hear Nejiro correctly? His brain confirmed it as it replayed what she just said. He cleared his throat and turned to hide the blush appearing on his face. What makes you say that? Come on, silly. Take a look around. Nejiro exclaimed. When Izuku turned his face further, Nejiro could only laugh at his bashful reaction. Sorry if I'm pushing things too far. It was just the perfect setup. Oh no, you're fine. Hey, anyway, I'll join. What game are we playing? How about Oni Tag? That's a fun one. Or we could just play hide and seek again. Or maybe we could buy some bread from a nearby convenience or grocery store for some bread and feed it to the ducks. Can we play Oni Tag and then feed bread to the ducks? Oh, you're a greedy one. Sure, but come on. Let's play before the sun goes down. After that, I'll buy some bread so we can feed the ducks. And then we can go get some dinner afterward. But I don't have that much money. Who said you had to buy? Come on, Izuku. I'll buy everything for us today. Now come on, stop stalling. Nejiro said, grabbing Izuku by the hand. And so, Izuku had to follow Nejiro. Together, the three of them played Oni Tag. Eri liked the game, but because of her lack of speed and endurance for the cardiovascular activity, Izuku and Nejiro accommodated by losing on purpose to keep her entertained. Despite being older and feeling like he was too old to enjoy a game of tag, it was oddly the most fun he ever had. The smile he saw on Eri and Nejiro's features as they played brightened his day in return. The magic was in the laughter and warmth shared among the people he was the closest to. Eventually, Eri told them she was exhausted. Nejiro dismissed herself to grab some cheap bread from a nearby convenience store, while Izuku took Eri under his wing. They walked the trail of the park surrounding a lake. To his surprise, Eri reached out and grabbed his hand for comfort. Initially shocked, Izuku adjusted and led her to the pebbled shores of the lake where a couple of ducks quacked away. Together, they stood in the quiet until Izuku broke it. Hey, Eri, are you cold by any chance? Eri shook her head. No, I'm fine. Big Sister Nejiro bought me some warm clothes yesterday before we came here. They look good on you. Izuku complimented. Maybe I should ask Nejiro if I can go shopping with her one day. Can I join when you two go? I don't see why not. We can go on either a weekend or after school, whichever lines up with Nejiro's schedule. Okay, Eri said as she focused her attention on the ducks. Something clicked inside of Izuku. Somehow, he didn't realize everything she was seeing was for the first time. Izuku smiled and patted Eri on the head out of sympathy, not realizing what he was doing until it was too late. But it felt right. Eri closed her eyes and giggled, relishing the comfort of Izuku's hand. Deku was wondering something. What is it? Are you dating Big Sister Nejiro Hado? Izuku's cat ears turned rigid out of embarrassment. He watched her twiddle with her fingers in anticipation of his answer. Clearly, she had great observational skills. Or maybe the way the two of them conversed hid nothing about their friendly relationship at all. No, I am not. But Izuku trailed off, hesitant to continue until his brain came to the rescue. Well, let's just say we're great friends. But was that the correct answer? Oh, okay, Eri exclaimed, satisfied with his answer. But Izuku didn't know if he was. His mind pondered the possibility of dating Nejiro. He didn't know how to go about it, without ruining something special he had built with her for the past 2 months. Additionally, there was a tiny voice in the back of his mind telling him Nejiro only liked him for his cat ears. It was a sound argument, especially from his perspective. Every time Nejiro visited him, it was mostly about his cat ears, so it was a difficult thought to ignore. And it wasn't like he could read her mind to see what she was truly thinking. Even if he could somehow convince himself Nejiro liked him, and she did, he wasn't sure the doubt would vanish. He needed to hear her say it to him personally. But would it disappear if she did? Izuku's train of thought came to a halt when he heard a swish of wind behind him. He turned and found Nejiro descending until her feet touched the ground. She held her hands in the air and smiled. Got some milk bread to feed the ducks. I hope they're hungry. And if we're hungry, we can also feed ourselves too. We're going to feed them bread? Eri asked. Yup. The birds you see quacking are called ducks, and they love bread. At least, that's what I learned when I was younger. But I'm not sure if it's healthy for them, but occasional treats should be fine. Just like people need treats, so do ducks. Nejiro set the bag of milk bread on the floor and untied it. Eri glanced at the ducks and marveled at the thought of feeding them. When Nejiro handed her a slice of milk bread, Eri's excitement was palpable. Eri looked at the slice of bread and then at the ducks before she looked at Izuku with confusion. Deku, do I give this whole slice of bread to them? No, you can rip off pieces of it like this and give it to them. Here, let me show you how, Izuku said, squatting next to Eri. He took the slice of bread from her hand and tore a tiny piece. He threw it to the ducks, who were gathering around their position on the rocky shore. They kept their distance, but once the bread landed next to them, they rushed in a frenzy. When the lucky contestant won the prize and gobbled the bread, the remaining hungry ducks squabbled with each other until another piece of bread came their way, courtesy of Eri. Eri smiled as the ducks bickered amongst each other again until the cycle repeated. More and more ducks appeared, yearning to fill their bellies with something scrumptious. Eri giggled as they nipped at each other with their beaks from envy. Izuku smiled and stepped back, letting Eri indulge herself. But as he continued staring at Eri, he felt something land on his head. He turned and heard a soft plop as a slice of bread fell from his head to the ground. Nejiro laughed and handed him another piece of bread, which he accepted. "I'll take the one that dropped," Nejiro said, reaching for it. "No, I'll do it," Izuku said. Before either of them knew what the outcome of the situation would bring, their hands touched each other. They stayed like that for several seconds before Izuku retracted his hand as quickly as possible, a blush lighting his face. "Well, aren't you a romantic individual?" Nejiro teased with a smile. "Tu didn't mean to." "Oh, I'm sure you didn't. But it doesn't excuse it. I don't think I would reject if you got down on your knee and proposed." What? Just joking. "Come on, lover boy. Let's go feed the ducks with Eri." With a swift motion, Nejiro took his hand and retrieved the bread from the ground before guiding them to Eri's side. From there, she released his hand to join the entertainment of feeding ducks. Izuku could feel the warmth of her hand dissipating into the air as he looked at the slice of bread in his hand. He returned his gaze to Nejiro and watched her toss pieces of bread into the water. She glanced at him and playfully bumped into his shoulder with a laugh. After that, scenes blurred with one another. When he went to his dorm room and got into bed after everything, he lay wide awake. He couldn't get rid of the thought of her shoulder bump. Most importantly, he couldn't neglect the joke she made with him. Proposing? Was this a secret sign that she liked him beyond anything he thought? Izuku sighed and turned to his side, staring at his desk and the posters on the wall. It was barely visible in the dim moonlight, but he could make out the designs. When he looked at his phone, he panicked at how late the time was. The journey his brain could take him on was frightening. He needed to sleep. Hopefully, tomorrow will hold a kinder day for his overthinking brain. The thought of winter break brewed in Izuku's mind with each passing day, but what stood at the forefront of his mind was the idea of dating Nejiro Hado. It was an odd one to think about. All the doubts in his mind clashed with a clatter of symphonies and created marvelous arguments about why he shouldn't ask her out. Meanwhile, his heart told him to go for it, and so it led him to a stalemate. An analysis paralysis. At some point, Izuku avoided Nejiro whenever he could. Sometimes he couldn't, but he didn't let it deter him from enjoying his time with her. However, he also didn't let it distract him from the fact he was overthinking every minuscule detail about the next step in their relationship. Should it go in that direction? Izuku sighed as he walked to UA High School in the morning. For now, he was walking alone to Class 1A. It was his own choice. Unfortunately, it didn't take long before a certain someone joined him. When Izuku heard footsteps match his pace, he turned and found Hado following him. Izuku winced and looked ahead, despite their eyes locking a second ago. "Midoriya, how is my favorite little kitten?" Hado asked, reaching to touch his cat ears. I'm doing fine," Izuku said, shirking from her hand. Had it gone a few more inches, she would have touched his ears. Izuku stopped walking. Hado imitated his action. What are you doing here?" Izuku asked. "What? A person who's interested in your relationship with Nejiro Hado can't be interested?" Izuku groaned inwardly. A rumor of this magnitude couldn't be kept a secret, and it wasn't like Nejiro was visiting him in secret. Still, wasn't the girls' side of the dorm on the opposite side? It was unlikely for Bakugo to spill the beans to the girls of Class 1A. Or was it, "How did you know that you two are dating?" No, not that. How did you know about my relationship with Nejiro? Don't tell me it was Nejiro. Nah, of course not. I learned this from the rumors going around Class 1A. Why do you think I know everything about your relationship? How she knit custom winter cat hats for you, and how you took care of Eri one Saturday afternoon with Nejiro, or that she keeps hanging out with you in your room. The more Hado shared, the more Izuku's jaw dropped in disbelief. If it wasn't for the limit established by the range of his mandible, it would have dropped to the center of the earth. Why do you know all of this? Izuku asked. How do you think? Stalking? Bingo! Hado exclaimed, winking. Really? Hado giggled. No, that would be a horrible breach of privacy. I said I would protect you as the leader of the Midoriya Protection Squad, not stalk you, dude. Otherwise, we would have to rename it to the Stalking Midoriya Squad. which carries a negative connotation. But I do have my sources, she said, waving her phone in the air. Izuku's eyes flickered, following the waving phone for several seconds. The urge to jump, driven by his cat-like instincts, almost consumed him. If it wasn't for the strength of his humanistic component, Izuku would have been powerless to stop himself. When he shook his head, he snapped out of his instinctual stupor. In the background, his mind was working overtime. It didn't take long before his brain connected the dots. Suddenly, Izuku realized how Hado knew the specific details of his relationship. Nejiro told you everything? Izuku asked. Wasn't it the other way around? He thought Hado was the one providing Nejiro information, but it seemed to be a mutual relationship. In retrospect, he should have known. Yup, you betcha. Our friendship bloomed when she was interested in my horns and touched them. We traded phone numbers and kept in touch. So, of course, I texted her when you got cat ears. Figured she would be interested, and I was right on the dot. Then our friendship grew exponentially over the past couple of months. Hado exclaimed. Izuku nodded his head. Yet there was one little observation Izuku couldn't help but notice. He remembered Nejiro poked Ashido's horn aggressively, but she touched his cat ears with affection. Did that perhaps mean something? Despite his efforts to banish them, Izuku couldn't shake the thoughts, only to have Nejiro's joke about proposing to replace them. It was difficult to dispute. Maybe something was there, but he wasn't 100% positive. He wanted to hear Nejiro say yes to the next step in their relationship, straight to his face, or vice versa, if he was going to be the one confirming her feelings for him. What a nerve-wracking time to be alive. So, what else do you want to know from me? Izuku asked. Well, that's about it. I don't need to ask if you two are dating or not since I got my answer from Nejiro already. What did she say? Hado winked and put a finger to her lips. She told me to keep it a secret. But it's obvious you two aren't dating. Like, come on. So obvious. Ignore what Bakugo said, because he's just one jealous boy. Anyway, I say Nejiro's one lucky girl. She's spending time with someone this cute. A cute kitten, alright. Speaking of which, Izuku said, trailing off as he saw Nejiro fly above them. Nejiro had a hand above her eyes, in search of someone. When she noticed the two of them from the sky, her expression brightened. Nejiro circled them before swooping down and landing beside Izuku. Hey, what are you two talking about? Nejiro asked, glancing between the two of them. Oh, just hero stuff, and how we can improve ourselves before winter break comes. Hado lied as easily as she breathed. Really? Can I join this conversation? Sure, but I'm sorry. I have to finish the rest of my homework before Ectoplasm Sensei catches me. I'll be going first. Hado exclaimed, rushing ahead. As she passed Izuku, Hado tapped him on the shoulder to wish him luck before sprinting away. And so Izuku was alone with Nejiro, who stared at him with interest. Hi. It's been a while since we last saw each other, right? Izuku asked. Nejiro smiled. Too true. I'm starting to think you're trying to avoid me on purpose. Am I right? Izuku panicked as his cat ears perked up in shock. Nejiro's astute observation made it impossible for Izuku to hide his intentions. His cat ears reflecting his emotions without his authorization confirmed it, eliciting a giggle from Nejiro. Well, it's not like I'm avoiding you on purpose. School is picking up again, and things are getting a little hectic. Right, but that won't matter in about 2 weeks because of winter break. Yeah, I was thinking, did you want to spend it with me? Nejiro asked, cutting him off. Izuku stopped mid-sentence. He stared at her as shrill alarm bells rattled in his head. It was a noisy cacophony. W, what do you mean by that? Let me turn that question around on you. What do you think I mean by that? Nejiro asked with a mischievous smile. Izuku opened his mouth, but closed it as they neared the school. A million different interpretations popped into his mind, but none of them were things he wanted to say, so he opted for something simpler. Vague. Ambiguous. Spending time with each other? Cha-ching. Right on the money. Except I was leaning towards something more amicable between the two of us. I've been wanting to go on a ski trip during a winter break for the longest time, but I never had the chance to. Did you want to join me and see what it's like? Was that an invitation to a date? The prospect of being alone with Nejiro for winter break seemed like a dangerous situation for him to be in, especially when she was the most beautiful girl in UA High School, confirmed by the beauty pageant. Still, it was a chance. A chance to ask her questions he had in his mind. Right? How long? Well, I don't know if we're going to be visiting our family over winter break, but we'll see what happens for that. How about the first week of winter break, discounting the weekend? Just the weekday, so 5 days at a ski resort? That's complicated now that I say it out loud, but I think you understand the gist of it. It'll be fun, and we can always adjust if things come up. So what do you say? Nejiro exclaimed. I don't think we're doing anything important at UA High School unless the holidays work differently around here. Now that I think about it, does it? No, it's pretty standard for the usual winter breaks of other high schools. I know because I've been here for 3 years. Nejiro said, I guess I could use that to relax for the first time in a while, and we probably deserve that break after all the things that went down. More like you, since your class is labeled as the troublemakers of this school, Nejiro said with a giggle. But I jest, and I didn't hear you the first time around. So what do you say? Want to join me? I don't have a choice, do I? Well, now that you've given me the power, nope. Izuku stepped into the frosty morning air with his luggage. It was 2 days after Christmas. The morning sun was waking from its sleep as stakes of yellow painted the once dark sky. It was cold enough to see his breath leave a streak of vapor flail across the air before it disappeared. Izuku wheeled his suitcase on the pathway, occasionally halting to rub his gloved hands together to spark warmth as he made his way to the Class 3A dorm. An early morning text had alerted Izuku to Nejiro's plan on how they would depart from UA High School. Nejiro had received a car for Christmas from her parents to celebrate her 3rd year at UA High School. It was their means of transportation. Though, he had to add, it was quite an expensive gift. Izuku poked his head over the bushes outside the dorm of Class 3A. He followed espionage tactics and flattened his cat ears as much as possible, though the winter hat Nejiro knitted for him hindered his ability. Scanning the entrance, it was devoid of human life. Izuku shifted to the sound of tires crackling and an engine muttering. He turned and watched as a car arrived next to the dorm. Nejiro waved her hand at him with glee. However, her fatigue was unmistakable from the drowsy expression she wore. Nejiro parked the car and hopped out, her excitement ramping up at the same pace as the rising sun. Izuku, it's so nice to see you again. It's been a while, hasn't it? Nejiro asked, skipping in his direction before she embraced him. Izuku squeaked in surprise. He didn't expect something like this first thing in the morning. But didn't we meet yesterday to list what we need to pack for the trip haphazardly? Nejiro giggled, releasing him from the embrace. It's a joke, silly. Oh, sorry, Hey, is that all you're bringing? Just one suitcase? Izuku nodded, glancing at the windows of the Class 3A dorm to see if anyone was staring at them. Luckily, there wasn't a single soul. Why? How much are you bringing? Nejiro took one look inside her car. A frown crossed her features. I feel like I'm packing my entire house. Izuku peeked over Nejiro's shoulder to discern her statement. Nejiro wasn't lying. The back seat of the car was bursting with her possessions. Is there room for my suitcase? Yep, there should be. Nejiro walked to her car and opened the door. At that moment, a couple of her belongings fell and tumbled to the floor. There, now there's some room. Izuku laughed, lending a hand to configure their baggage in her car through the use of geometry. Once it all fit, Izuku closed the trunk while Nejiro closed the back seat door. Izuku made his way to the passenger seat while Nejiro waited for him. When he put his seatbelt on, Nejiro adjusted the temperature of the car and drove. On the way, Izuku glanced at Nejiro several times. The thought of Nejiro's proposal joke was fresh in his mind, even though it was a while ago. And how could he liberate it from his mind when it was a possibility? He could ask her out now and get the stressful situation out of the way. If a rejection occurred, at least he knew what he meant to Nejiro. If not, then how would things proceed? The fear of ruining the vacation between the two of them forced him into a difficult position. Either they enjoyed each other's presence for the week, or tension suffocated them with each activity they did. Izuku let out a silent sigh, troubled by his thoughts. He closed his eyes, hoping an answer would provide itself to him. When emptiness crossed his mind, Izuku reopened his eyes and stared at the repetitive roads. Figuring slumber would ease his mind, Izuku closed his eyes again and fell asleep to the humming tires on the road. Izuku didn't know how long he slept, but when he woke up, the uneven road greeted him. Izuku stretched his arms out and crossed them, earning movement in the cramped space of the car. When he opened his eyes, he found the dreaded streets filling his vision again. The other thing he noticed was the plushie he held in his arms. Izuku looked at it. The penguin looked back at him. It was cute. Izuku glanced at her, but her focus was on the roads. He lifted his hand and patted the plushie on the head with slight movements. However, Nejiro's voice rang in the air, making Izuku jolt in surprise. "Morning, sleepyhead," Nejiro exclaimed. "And morning? What do you mean by that? How long did I sleep for?" Izuku asked. He adjusted himself to a comfortable position in the car seat, the penguin plushie staying put in his arms. "Well, it's nearing afternoon, so I'd say a couple of hours? Unless it's already 12 since I last checked, but while you were sleeping, I grabbed some coffee from a nearby convenience store, and I see you got acquainted with my good childhood friend, Mr. Pungy." I can see that too," Izuku said, feeling his temperature rise from embarrassment. "How did it end up in my arms?" "Well, let's just say Mr. Pungy likes to hang out with other cute people. Let's say someone like you," Nejiro commented as she handed him her phone. "Besides, look at my wallpaper. Double the cuteness." Izuku stared at her phone and gulped. He pressed the button to turn her phone on. It was as she said. Illustrated on her lock screen was a picture of him, embracing the plushie and sleeping. "Isn't it adorable?" Nejiro asked. "HM? Yeah, very adorable." The concerning question was how she took the picture while she was driving. Wasn't that dangerous? Or did she do it while she stopped for coffee? That seemed to be the most probable answer. "Anyway, you woke up just in time. We're pretty much here." Izuku tightened his grasp around the penguin plushie as he gazed out the window. The landscape transformed to fit the imagination he had drawn in his head. It was a ski resort, that was for sure. Little obscure dots descended the mountainside and weaved in various directions, guided by the desires of their hearts. Soon that would be him. It made his heart flutter with the fear of trying a new thing. Nejiro found a parking spot near the entrance to the hotel where they were staying and parked the car. Izuku continued to stare off into the distance, oblivious to Nejiro's eyes locked on him. When he turned, Izuku found Nejiro staring at him with her chin resting on her hand. A playful smile danced on her lips. "Are you having fun, Izuku?" Nejiro sang. "Oh, sorry we needed to unpack, right?" Izuku asked. Nejiro hummed to herself. "You guessed right. After that, we can practice tomorrow since the sun is going to be going down soon. The days are short, but there's going to be no shortage of how much fun we're going to experience." Izuku smiled, sensing the joyful sentiment emanating from Nejiro. "But we still have time to practice today, right?" "Fui, no thanks. I'm not trying to be a party pooper, but staying stuck inside a car, driving for hours at a time, made me tired. I want to sleep early and rise with the sun to hit the slopes tomorrow. And a certain someone doesn't have a driver's license, so... Well, I'm not 18 yet. I'm just teasing you. Obviously, you can't drive yet. I'm your guardian on this trip, technically speaking. Anyway, let's go unpack. I want to explore this place a little, even if we don't go skiing today." "Right, let's do that. But before we do that, let me get the key card so we can access our room," Nejiro said, pointing to the establishment. Okay." Izuku watched her leave the car and disappear through the doors. Left alone to his own devices, Izuku stepped out of the vehicle and surveyed his surroundings. When boredom entered his mind, Izuku stared at the entrance to the hotel. Nothing. Nejiro's absence made his heart grow fonder. He fiddled with his fingers and stared at the luggage, illustrating descriptions in his brain of how he was going to carry the most amount of luggage with ease. To say she had multiple times the number of stuff he brought was an understatement. "Got the goodies." Izuku squeaked in fear at Nejiro's sudden outburst. They both stared at each other until Nejiro laughed. "Did you just squeak?" Nejiro asked. No." Nejiro laughed again as she playfully slapped him on the shoulder. "Look, I know I've heard you squeak before, but you don't have to be this embarrassed about it." "All right, I just didn't hear you behind me." Izuku said. But aren't you a cat? You should have heightened hearing, right? Not if I'm focused on something else. Though I don't think we tested my hearing yet." Nejiro's eyes twinkled. "Is that an invitation?" "Wait, no. That's not what I meant. Also, can I call you a scaredy cat now?" That fits, right? Nejiro asked, inching closer to him. Wait, Nejiro. Calm down, Izuku exclaimed, waving his hands in the air to prevent Nejiro from coming any closer. Perhaps too little, too late with how close Nejiro already was. Izuku placed the last luggage on the floor, which ended up being his, and let out a sigh of relief. Nejiro was busy locking the car and ensuring the safety of her first vehicle while looking for anything left behind. He peered through the open door in case Nejiro was sneaking up on him again. Once the coast was clear, Izuku refocused on the interior of the condo. It was a bit too lavish, and even that was an understatement, especially when he took one look inside the bathroom. It was sparkling clean and extravagant. Could a bathroom be extravagant? Izuku didn't think so, but this condo was proving him wrong. Izuku stepped out of the bathroom and looked around. The elegance of the condo led him to investigate the rest of it. The first half of the condo boasted a floor-to-ceiling window wall offering a view of the snowy mountain. A storage bench stretched the entire length of the window wall at the bottom, providing convenient seating with cushions. Positioned between the twin beds and window wall, a dedicated workplace was set up, awaiting productivity. Across the twin beds, a TV sat patiently, its screen reflecting the light of the room. He poked his head through the other side of the condo. Adjacent to the entrance, there was a master bedroom, enclosed in its dedicated room. Further along the room, there was a fully equipped kitchen, and across from it, a dining table was located. In between the kitchen and window wall with the same storage bench, a lounge was decorated with a sumptuous-shaped sofa facing a larger TV. Izuku let out a heavy sigh. Each thing he looked at boosted the amount of money he imagined Nejiro spent for the entire package. How did she afford this? Maybe her parents pitched a hand? Izuku? Where are you? Did you get lost in this big condo? Izuku perked up when he heard Nejiro's voice echo throughout the condo. Izuku walked to the doorway that connected both halves of the condo, but as he stepped through, Nejiro had the same idea. Their bodies collided with a soft thud. Izuku let out a small grunt, the impact catching him off guard. With a smile, Nejiro tapped Izuku on the nose. Got you, Nejiro said, giggling at Izuku's surprised reaction. So, how are you liking so far? Is it far better than you imagined it would be? Isn't it awesome? Why, yeah, a little too awesome, Izuku said, staring at her by accident. Did someone beautiful catch your eye? Izuku averted her gaze as he blushed. Very beautiful. Ah, thanks, Izuku. It's nice to hear you say it. You know, now that I think about it carefully, I can't wait for this trip to start. There's so many fun things to do that it's endless. We can be stuck here for weeks, and it won't cover everything. So let's do our best to explore it all promptly, all right? Yep, no problem there. Izuku watched as Nejiro turned and walked to one of her luggage. She rummaged through it, attempting to find something. Izuku walked to his suitcase and opened it, focused on searching for his phone charger. It didn't take long before Nejiro attracted his attention, as always. Hey, Izuku, look over here, Nejiro exclaimed. Izuku stared at her, but something held a death grip on his attention as a small dot of red raced across the room. The cat instincts implanted within him took control and forced his body to move without thinking as Izuku scrambled after the red dot. When the red dot came to a stop on the ground, Izuku pounced on it. As Izuku opened his cupped hands, his heart sank when he discovered nothing. When he looked at Nejiro, Izuku found her standing above him, trying her best to hide her mirth, but failing miserably. Nejiro giggled and patted him on the head, scratching him behind the ears as a reward. Hee, maybe I'm the one who's going to enjoy this vacation more than I thought I would. I can't wait to show you what I have planned for this entire week. Hey, I didn't say you could scratch my ears, Izuku complained, but trailed off. Izuku could feel her excitement. It was palpable, and in turn, compelled him to feel her sentiment. Sure, he knew skiing was always going to be a part of the plan, but he had somehow forgotten head pats and ear scratches were on the list, too. But it didn't matter. For now, he was going to relish Nejiro's touch on his head. It was warm, nice, and soft. There was no other way to put it. Izuku stood to the side at the base of one of the bunny hills, watching Nejiro glide across the icy terrain they were on. She dug her ski poles into the ground and pushed further down the designated path. Despite the minimal movements, Nejiro looked like she was having fun, relearning what she knew from the past. However, the ski goggles made her look silly, and he was confident he shared the same silliness since he wore them, too. Nejiro turned and lifted the goggles from her eyes to strap them around her head. There, you see. Pretty easy. Though I can't blame you for being scared since this is your first time. Yeah, you told me you went skiing when you were younger, right? Yup. But that was like 3 years ago. I'm rusty right now, but I think I'm getting the hang of it. Now it's your turn, Nejiro exclaimed. But it feels so awkward like wearing flippers and trying to walk. Well, you're not supposed to walk in skis, silly. Nor are you supposed to walk with flippers. You're supposed to swim in them. So same thing with the skis, you ski on them. I mean, you can walk with them, but their primary use is to perform their designated function. Nejiro giggled and slid next to him. Here, do you want me to help you? I could be your support. Yes, please, Izuku said. Nejiro smiled. Well, I would have to take my skis off to truly support you, but I can accompany you. That works, I just need some persona-person guidance. All right, now remember what I told you. Have a slight lean and push forward with the ski poles. Make sure the ski poles don't dig into the ground while you're gliding across the snow. And last of all, take your time and have fun. All right, Izuku got into position and dug his ski poles into the snow to get a feel for his slow momentum. Once he acclimated to the speed, Izuku propelled himself. He drifted across the snow and down the bunny hill. As for Nejiro, she followed him, monitoring every movement. It was comforting to know she was there every step of the way. As Izuku slowed to a stop at the bottom of the bunny hill, Nejiro came sailing into view. Right next to him. Hey, you're better than I thought you would be, Izuku. Don't tell me you've been practicing in secret before we came here. Have you? Nejiro asked. And no, if I add speed, I have a feeling I'm going to fall. Oh, come on, Izuku. I'm just trying to encourage you. Obviously, we're not trying to make you a pro in just 1 week, but we'll make this an experience that you'll never forget in your life. So if you go skiing again, you can overcome the challenge quicker. And maybe you can come with me again one day. Izuku's heartbeat quickened. I look forward to another time. Nejiro studied him, her blue eyes tracing his expression before she smiled as if she knew what he meant by that. I'm sure you would, Nejiro commented. But let's take this one step at a time and teach you how to stop after you propel yourself. It's a given that higher speeds will have different methods, but for now, I'll explain it before I demonstrate the action part of it. Izuku stared at Nejiro as she explained the process of stopping with hand movements. For a moment, time slowed as the only thing he saw was Nejiro. In the background, people were dealing with their inexperience, but none of it mattered. She was the only person he had eyes for. Because her goggles were strapped on her head, he studied every expression Nejiro made. He didn't know what came over him, but everything felt perfect. His mind, usually rampant with an ocean of a million thoughts, was quiet and unwilling to budge from this moment. Here he was at a random luxurious ski resort with the most beautiful girl in UA High School, and she was teaching him how to ski. And they were cherishing each other's company with no interruptions. It was surreal, but the atmosphere of it was serene and pleasant, and he was aware of it. Izuku might experience doubts after all was said and done, but for now, he was probably the happiest person alive, and there was nothing more he wanted than to extend this instant for what it was worth. After Nejiro finished talking, she gazed into Izuku's eyes. He could see the question marks appearing in the air beside her head. Hey, did you catch all that before I demonstrated? Nejiro asked. Sorry, could you repeat that? Despite Izuku's best efforts, time slipped away from him, leaving a few brief hours before the sun disappeared below the horizon. The best he could muster was skiing across the bunny hill with ease. They didn't get to touch the towering mountain that loomed over them, and he couldn't extend the heavenly moments he spent with her because of the shortened period of daylight. With a crestfallen emotion orchestrated by his mind, they walked to their condo. Izuku let out a sigh as the door opened. He glanced at Nejiro to see her expression, but the way she hummed a jovial tune was enough to return some serenity in his heart. She didn't seem to be bothered by his inability to ski. During her teaching session, Izuku was sure Nejiro was going to lose patience over his incompetence, but nothing happened. It wasn't like the times Bakugo snapped at him. Although they missed the genuine experience on the mountain, he still felt Nijire's unwavering happiness emanating from her. Like he always felt. She never changed, no matter what situation they were in. When Nijire let out a sigh, Izuku panicked. Was this where she was going to tell him how upset she was at him? I just noticed something, I'm starving. What do you say we grab some food from a nearby restaurant? Nijire asked. She sat on the storage bench near the window in the room with the twin beds to take off her thick jacket. Izuku let out a sigh of relief on the inside. Hunger was her primary concern. I think I noticed it too. Izuku agreed, taking off his layers of warm clothing. First, we have to shower and pick it up by car. But we can order now, Nijire commented. She gazed at him and patted the space next to her. Join me. Izuku nodded his head and took his position next to her as she browsed the menu of a nearby restaurant through her phone. It didn't take long for them to choose something they liked. But while they did so, Izuku couldn't help but feel conscious about his proximity to Nijire. His eyes flickered to her, studying her every movement. He had been close to her several times since they first met, but this time it felt different. His heart was beating out of his chest with a cacophony of noise. He was afraid she could hear him. What was coming over him? I'm so tired. Nijire groaned as she swayed side to side before she rested her head on his shoulder. I thought just because I train a lot on my stamina would mean I wouldn't tire of driving or skiing all day long, but I thought wrong. Izuku stiffened, feeling a massive surge of nervousness course through his body. Why, yeah, I guess so. I'm also exhausted. Nijire glanced at him and smiled. Are you sure? You still seem like you have a lot of energy. W, what do you mean by that? You forget your cat ears are very telling, Nijire said, pointing at his twitching cat ears. Izuku felt the temperature increase, his face displaying a shade of red. He was sure his cat ears were exhibiting the same symptoms of his embarrassment. I'll wait. Please don't look. This is inconvenient. Nijire giggled and brought her knees close to her chest before she snuggled with him. Izuku, I have one thing to say. You're just too cute. Never change. You hear me? Izuku stayed still. He didn't know how to respond. He wasn't intentionally trying to be cute all the time. His cat ears flitted several times as if they were waiting for him to answer Nijire's question. So he thought of something to appease her. We'll try. Nijire let out a content sigh and cuddled with him one more time before she departed from him to grab a change of clothes from her luggage. Anyway, I think I'm going to take a shower first unless you want to. And no, I'm fine. You can go ahead. Izuku blurted out, his nerves fried from Nijire's cuddles. All right, I'm going to keep my phone on so you can track the readiness of the order. If they finish quicker than I shower, could you let me know? Sure, I'll do that. Thanks, Izuku. You're the best, Nijire exclaimed. Izuku watched her disappear behind the corner. When he heard the bathroom door close, Izuku let out a sigh and buried his face in his hands. A groan escaped his lips. If this was going to happen the entire week of the vacation, how was he going to survive? Izuku peeked through his fingers before he glanced at Nijire's open phone. Something clicked inside of him. Why did she leave her phone with him when she could just turn the notifications on and listen? Izuku waited several seconds until he felt his hand reach for Nijire's phone. He lifted it and brought it closer to his face. He glanced at the corner where she vanished. The sound of water could be heard. Izuku returned his gaze to the phone and stared at it. He couldn't lie. His curiosity was getting the best of him. Like a cat, half of Izuku wanted to inspect the contents of her phone, especially the picture she had taken of him. But the other half told him it was a breach of privacy. Izuku debated with himself, his eyes flickering back and forth from the screen to the corner until his head hurt. In the end, he searched through the images of her gallery. With each scroll, pictures of the big three constantly appeared. And Yu, but that was obvious considering she was Nijire's best friend. It didn't take long until he discovered pictures of himself scattered throughout the camera album. Most of them were from moments he wasn't paying attention. They weren't bad, until he saw the picture of him in the first winter hat Nijire made for him. His cheeks burned as he scrolled away from it as quickly as possible. It was an embarrassment, particularly with the way he looked shocked in the picture. However, his curiosity got the best of him again. Izuku lay on the cushions of the storage bench and scrolled to the first picture she had taken of him. He checked the date of the picture, prompting his eyes to widen. Realization hit him like a truck. Had it been that long since they've known each other? It's been 3 months. Where did time go? When did it ignite their relationship to the point it is today? And how had their relationship not developed to the point they were dating? Maybe because he didn't ask her out? Though he felt the pressure was more on him. Were males the one supposed to be the one asking the other out? Izuku didn't know. Still, it was a wonder to see how much had transpired since they met. As the questions circled and bounced in the cage of his mind, Izuku yawned and closed his eyes. He opened them, but with each blink, his eyelids got heavier and heavier. Suddenly, a gentle shake woke him from his slumber. Hey, wake up, sleepyhead. We have dinner to eat and you still have a shower, Nejiro said. Her voice floated through the air in a sing-song manner. Izuku let out a soft grunt before he stuck his limbs out to stretch. A yawn accompanied it. Then he returned his hands to where they felt comfortable, which ended up being close to his chest, and closed his eyes. He was still holding Nejiro's phone because he felt the object in his hand escape his grasp. Just as he was about to return to his dreams, he felt a warm hand rub over his stomach. Izuku yelped and stared at her, wide awake from the unsolicited touch. Good kitten, Nejiro teased. For a second, Izuku relished her touch. It catered to his cat instincts of trust, but when his analytical mind prevailed, he pulled himself together. And Nejiro, what you doing? Izuku asked. I'm treating you to a belly rub, Nejiro said with a smirk. No thank you. Nejiro laughed and retracted her hand to her side. Yeah, I guess I was a little uncalled for. Well, it's your turn to shower. The food is ready to be picked up, so I'll get the food and come back. What do you say? Izuku nodded his head and sleepily sat up on the storage bench. Nejiro extended a hand to him, making Izuku stare at it in confusion. She shook it, beckoning for him to grab it. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize you wanted me to grab your hand, Izuku said, accepting her help before she placed both her hands on his. And Nejiro? Caught you now, Nejiro said. Izuku stared at her and then at her hands. She had soft hands, much softer than he realized. They were extremely soft and comforting. Why was he so focused on how soft her hands were when she had touched him all those times before? Maybe it was his sleep-deprived brain noticing the minor details. Something inexplicable compelled Izuku to place his other hand on top of hers. Watching her, Izuku noticed a gentle smile form on her lips. I guess we both caught each other, huh? Nejiro asked. Yeah, I guess we did, Izuku agreed, his cat ears fluttering without his awareness. She really had some soft hands. Izuku opened his eyes. Slowly, they traced the ceiling. Despite the darkness, he could see the sun trying to peek inside the room. Silence echoed loudly in his ears as he shifted his head side to side to remember where he was. If Izuku hadn't known any better, he would have thought he was still in his dreams, but the way the fluffy blanket grazed against his coarse skin reminded him he was at the ski resort. Izuku sat up on his bed, but not before he got a deep stretch in. Nejiro had taken a master bed for the night, while he slept on one of the twin beds. Izuku decided it was for the best. Nejiro didn't mind sleeping in the same bed, but he was concerned. Izuku rolled between the two beds, leaving the blankets jumbled. It felt right to do so. Izuku slid out of bed and into his slippers. He walked toward the covered window wall and parted the curtains to let the sunlight in. It was his mistake. The brightness temporarily blinded him. Izuku raised his hands to his eyes. Oh, that's bright. Once his eyes adjusted to the illumination, Izuku sat on the storage bench and stared into the expanse for a few minutes. From what he could see, a constant stream of people entered and exited the complex. As if on cue to provide Izuku entertainment, a small snowball fight unfolded among a few men, much to Izuku's delight. A perfectly timed snowball smashed one of them in the face, knocking the ski goggles off his head. Izuku grimaced in pain as his cat ears flattened against his head. That looked painful. Izuku continued staring at interesting tidbits of interaction between the people below, lost in thought of how the day would unfold when he heard a muffled yawn from the other side of the condo. Izuku's cat ears flickered several times. He peered over his shoulder to stare at the end of the hallway. Nobody was there. Izuku carefully stepped away from the storage bench and walked down the hallway. He poked his head through the door to the other side of the condo. He stared at the master bedroom, but the blinds covered his view of Nejiro. Was it okay if he opened the door to the master bedroom? Izuku shuffled from the doorway and placed his hand on the doorknob to open the door. When he did, Nejiro perked up and lifted her head to stare at him. Her sleepy expression was cute. "Good morning, Nejiro," Izuku greeted. Didn't want to interrupt anything, but I was figuring we should start the day while it's still young. "And I'd say you're correct," Nejiro said, plopping her head on the pillow. "But I'm tired. I didn't get good sleep last night because this was a new place. How about you? How did you sleep? Are you ready to tackle the day?" Izuku nodded his head. "As ready as I'll ever be. And the bed was comfortable enough that I slept throughout the night without waking up once." "Lucky you. Now, could you hold me up? I don't think I can get up with my strength." Izuku walked to her bed and accepted her extended hand. Yet something fell off when he neared her. When Nejiro clasped both hands over his and smiled, alarm bells rang in his head. For a second, nothing happened, but then she yanked him into the same bed with her and wrapped her arms around him. Izuku panicked, but kept himself collected. Well, as much as he could, considering he was in the same bed as Nejiro. "And Nejiro?" Izuku tried to liberate himself from her grasp, but couldn't move despite being under the notion she was weaker than he was. Turns out, Nejiro was a lot stronger than he perceived. Nejiro let out a content sigh and hugged him tighter, burying Izuku in her embrace. "Just 5 more minutes, and I'll be set," she said, closing her eyes. MMPH was all Izuku could say. It felt nice to be held by someone like her, but simultaneously terrifying considering there was no reason to think like that. After all, no one was around to witness them. So why was he so nervous? Was it because she was beautiful? It was a shallow reason, but Izuku hadn't been one to talk to beautiful girls until recently when he joined UA High School. Izuku didn't have time to ponder the question for long as he took a whiff of a lingering scent coming from her hair. It smelled like strawberries. It was intoxicating. The moment of serenity was enough to calm him, but then Izuku realized he was still extremely close to Nejiro's body, so he struggled again. Hey, stop moving so much. You're making my beauty sleep impossible to come." Nejiro murmured into his ear. A big drop of sweat rolled down the back of Izuku's head. If Izuku thought he was going to make it out of her embrace alive, then he was wrong. It was going to be rough. Izuku watched Nejiro control her ski poles to propel down the bunny hill faster than he'd ever seen. It wasn't quick compared to the people skiing the trails on the mountain, but it was compared to the beginners, which included him. Izuku rubbed his hands and breathed on them, creating a warm sensation to flow through his fingers. It was chillier than he thought it would be. Nejiro skied to his position and smiled. "Now it's your turn. I want to see you go quicker than I did." "I don't think that's going to happen today. Don't worry. Tomorrow, we're going to hit the big one. WWER? How is that supposed to be comforting?" Nejiro smirked. "It isn't, haha, but we can't always stay at the beginner level. So I'm going to give you just a little push to help speed things along. Besides, I paid for the lift tickets, and I don't want it to go to waste. But if you truly don't feel comfortable, we can wait one more day," she said with a wink. Izuku shook his head. No. I'll go tomorrow, even if it kills me." Nejiro laughed. "You're exaggerating, but don't feel like I'm pressuring you to do it. And I'll be there if you fall or if you hurt yourself. So fall as many times as you want, and just have fun." "All right, having fun falling. That sounds counterintuitive." Nejiro patted him on the back. "No excuses. Now let me see you give it your fastest shot here." Izuku nodded his head. With his ski goggles in place, Izuku took a deep breath, feeling the refreshing air fill his lungs before exhaling. Before Izuku pushed off his ski poles, he elected to cheat. With a small boost from his quirk, he focused it on his hands to enhance the speed. He surveyed the land in front of him. It was sparse enough. A perfect moment to launch himself. And so, with a push, Izuku sped down the hill. The rushing, frigid wind brushed against his face while gravity performed its job. Izuku felt the thrill of velocity, forcing his heart to reach his throat in excitement. The fresh taste of acceleration slowed time, if only for a second. He was doing it. He was properly skiing for the first time in his life. Once the electrifying excitement wore off, Izuku practiced breaking in the way Nejiro taught him. But before he could, Izuku lost control. He chalked it up to his inexperience. After all, that was why they were practicing. For another second in his life, time slowed as he watched the ground tilt to meet him. Izuku crashed into the ground with a soft whump. He tumbled across the scenery, experiencing each impact until he slowed to a stop. When Izuku looked into the sky, he swore stars were twinkling in the heavens despite the lack of darkness. His chest heaved up and down as he attempted to get a grip on his situation. Was it him, or were the clouds really beautiful right now? Nejiro's appearance, along with the worried expressions of others, was what broke him out of his stupor. The surrounding people helped him to his feet, but left him alone once they discovered Nejiro was his primary partner. Izuku, are you okay? You took a pretty heavy fall. Nejiro asked, fear written on her expression. Izuku stared at her and shook his head to get rid of the snow stuck on his winter hat. I think I'm good. Can we go again? Nejiro tilted her head in confusion and checked him once more before a warm smile appeared. That's the spirit. But as long as you don't have a concussion, then I'm fine to go as many times as you want. Speaking of which, do heroes get concussions? I'm not sure, but I've been hit in the head harder than this and didn't suffer a concussion. Nejiro hummed to herself, considering her options. Well, we can always see if any symptoms appear or worsen over the day, but for now, we can just take it easy and practice on speed and ski within shape. Here, just in case, I'll be skiing right alongside you to teach you some new lessons and monitor your health. Izuku nodded and followed her to the top of the bunny hill. Maybe the boost with his quirk wasn't the best idea. Izuku sat on the edge of the forest near the bunny hills. He was busy catching his breath after skiing for another hour or so. Nejiro sat with him, her skis planted in the snow alongside his. Nejiro rubbed her gloved hands together and blew air on it, ensuring her hands remained warm. Izuku stared at her for a second. Only a second, but it was like Nejiro knew. She turned to look at him. Izuku averted her gaze by looking in a different direction. He felt a sense of relief, thinking he had gotten away with it until he heard her giggle. I saw you staring at me, Izuku. You would think someone who keeps getting caught staring at me would know how to do it more discreetly. To think it's an acquired skill that takes time to build. Now, who told you that? Myself. Well, I guess you're right. It takes a lifetime to build a skill to stare at someone without them noticing. Nejiro teased, mirth dancing on her features. Well, I try my best, but I can keep practicing. Oh, I don't mind. You can stare at me as long as you like. But only if it's you. I don't want anyone else staring at me like you do. Izuku nodded his head, missing the message. It took him several seconds to understand the meaning of it, but by the time he did, he felt like he had lost the opportunity to ask her what she meant. At least that's what his brain told him. As Izuku stared at her, she returned her attention to the mesmerizing scenery enveloping them. In a quiet moment, Izuku felt an urge from the small voices whispering in his head. Did he ask her out now? Was this the perfect chance? If he waited for a better moment, would it be too late? What was holding him back from asking her the question he'd been wanting to ask for some time? Was it fear? Fear of losing everything he had built with her so far? Rejection? Rejection liable to damage everything between them in the present and the future? Insecurity? Insecurity that his cat ears were doing all the heavy lifting for him? Uncertainty? Uncertainty about what Nejiro said to him and all the hints she dropped? Or dread she wouldn't like him anymore if his cat ears went away despite what she said? Or was it the buried feeling he wasn't worthy of her love? Did he deserve the friendliness from Nejiro? Was he worthy of being loved by someone of her caliber? Everything he buried was erupting in a fountain of questions. He was used to suppressing his feelings, and staring at them face to face was difficult. If he pushed his hesitations and asked her out, maybe everything would align. But how was this dating thing supposed to work? Izuku berated himself. He committed to his decision by tapping her on the shoulder. Nejiro turned and stared at him, waiting for him to say something. Unfortunately for Izuku, he didn't think this far ahead. Just the tapping part. Izuku, are you okay? Is it your possible concussion? Now that I think about it, you don't look too good right now, Nejiro noted, shuffling closer to study his face. A little too close to his liking, but he didn't have a choice. No, I'm good, I promise. I just wanted to say something else. Nejiro stared at him. He could see the confusion in her eyes. What is it? Well, do you like me? Nejiro stared at him for several seconds. For Izuku, each of those seconds dragged. His eyes wandered over her expression to search for an answer without her vocal confirmation. Did he say something wrong? Surely not, right? Nejiro smiled and let out a sigh of relief. Of course I do. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here with you right now. Alone, just the two of us. Well, what I meant to say was something like Izuku trailed off. Ah, I see. You want to know if our relationship can move to the next level, right? More on the romantic side of things? Nejiro asked. Izuku nodded, somewhat embarrassed by his question. Yes, Nejiro giggled. First off, I'm so glad your concussion symptoms aren't worsening, and it has nothing to do with that. Second, how long have you been thinking about this? For a couple of weeks now. Well, for what it's worth, I've been dropping a lot of hints to see if you would catch on to any of them. Did you notice any of them? Admittedly, a little, but I thought that was something you usually did to everyone. Izuku said, you think I would joke around with proposing to everyone I meet? Or rubbing the stomach of my friends like that? Or touching their cat ears? Come on, Izuku. Doesn't that sound a little too carefree and dangerous? Nejiro asked, flashing him a sheepish smile. I mean, I know I got a little carried away when I first met Class 1A, but I've been trying to stop it because, consequences might happen if I do that in the real world. And it's with curious intention, as I like to call it. Sorry, Nejiro. I'm not too good at deciphering hints, as you can tell. Nejiro waved her hand around in the air to dismiss his apology. It's fine, Izuku. All good. But yes, I accept. Accept? Nejiro jokingly slapped him on the arm. Come on, Izuku. Get with the program. I'm saying yes to your confession. I'm willing to be your girlfriend. Girlfriend with a capital G. Izuku blinked twice at her. Now, things are moving too fast. Weeks ago, he was pondering how he wanted to ask Nejiro out. And here he was successful in his goal. So why did he find it unbelievable? Izuku pinched himself to confirm if it was real, but it was. Was it that easy? Just like that. And he was dating her? One question. No fancy fireworks or some luxurious moments like he imagined in stories or movies. Izuku looked at her. Nejiro returned his gaze and leaned toward him, close enough to rest her head on his shoulder. They remained in each other's company for the next few seconds. Despite the silence, it wasn't detrimental or awkward in any capacity. It was tranquil and perfect, at least for those several minutes, until Izuku's brain spurred him to the next goal at hand. How was he supposed to treat someone when they were dating? Did things go on like normal? Did he have to do anything special? However, Nejiro grabbed Izuku's hand with both of hers, snapping him out of his continuous train of thought. So did you want to continue skiing or grab lunch? Right, this wasn't something Izuku had to tackle simultaneously. All he had to do was take this relationship one step at a time until more doubts appeared in his mind. Then he could address them one by one. Lunch, please. Then let's get going. We can iron out some more details on our relationship while we eat. Nejiro commented as she stood and extended her hand in his direction. Izuku smiled and accepted her hand to stand on his feet. He did not know what the future had in store for him, but he hoped it was something pleasant. And if things dipped down, he hoped Nejiro would always stay by his side like she was doing now. Izuku lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling. He found himself in the same position as the morning before, staring blankly at the white canvas. Except it was in the night. He should have been sleeping to rest before the big day later today, but he wasn't. Izuku let out a miserable but quiet sigh. Nejiro was sleeping next to him, so it was imperative he didn't wake her. The rest of the day had gone peacefully. They ate lunch and returned to ski. Then they enjoyed the rest of the evening with a fancy dinner and watched 2 cheesy romance movies before they slept. A few cheap scenes helped the two of them laugh, but a couple of moments were analogous to his moments with Nejiro. It was interesting, but when the clock struck late into the night and they settled into the master bed together, Izuku couldn't shake the racing thoughts from overwhelming him. This was paired with the thought of sleeping in the same bed as Nejiro, but that was currently the least of his problems. It contrasted with the victorious moment when he asked Nejiro out. However, everything finally collapsed on him when he found a peaceful moment. He kept reliving the moment he asked her out. It was the best thing to occur in his life, but it all felt convenient. All the countless moments in his life where the other shoe dropped and situations worsened were a staple in his life. So why was it not happening here? Why was Nejiro not telling him this was a joke, and she had a boyfriend he didn't know about? The thought of Bakugo rose into his mind. Izuku knew it had something to do with him because of the trauma he suffered in the past, but this time should have been different. Nejiro wasn't Bakugo, so why didn't it feel different? It wasn't like Nejiro had the same personality as Bakugo. It was far on the opposite side of the spectrum. Then there was the contemplation on how he should function as a boyfriend. It wasn't like there was a guide on how to be the perfect boyfriend. Or maybe he didn't search hard enough for one online. Simultaneously, it felt unauthentic to do so. Izuku sighed again and laid an arm over his head. It was all the overthinking persuading him to write his signature on the contract of insomnia. If he could stop the thoughts in a snap, then Izuku was sure he would fall asleep in a couple of minutes. Yet when he closed his eyes, waves of thoughts saturated his brain until he opened them and stared at the monotonous tone of the drywall for the millionth time. Izuku stared at Nejiro. His eyes traced her peaceful expression. Izuku pinched himself to ensure he was alive and witnessing her next to him. Nejiro was beautiful. Izuku found a sense of calm invade his heart. Sure, he told himself he would take things one step at a time, but he was human and prone to stumbling over doubts and negativity. Izuku moved with silent intentions as he sat on the edge of the bed. He slid off the bed and stood on his feet. The wooden floor zapped his feet with icy sensations, sending shivers through his legs and spine. He put his feet into a pair of slippers and stared at Nejiro. She was still fast asleep. He tiptoed across the room and bumbled around for a minute before he reached the end of the hallway. He entered the other side of the condo and reached the end of the room to sit on the storage bench. With a peek through the curtains, Izuku studied the scenery to occupy his mind with distractions. It was dead quiet. The world was a dark and vacant region, devoid of human presence. It was a stark distinction to the morning when he witnessed the excitement daylight brought. It was like an apocalypse had swept across the ski resort and left everything untouched and pristine except for humans. Izuku perked up when he heard footsteps behind him. His cat ears flickered back and forth several times, alerting him to the noise like a radar. Pierced with a guilty feeling, Izuku turned and observed as Nejiro sleepily walked toward him. Sorry. Nejiro, did I wake you up? Izuku asked. Nejiro mumbled, but shook her head when the question registered in her mind. No, you didn't. Sometimes I wake up randomly throughout the night. Tonight is one of those nights. And when I woke up, I noticed you weren't beside me, so I figured something was wrong. Is there anything wrong? Izuku couldn't tell if Nejiro was creating a flawless excuse or not, but he didn't press any further. No, not at all. I was just Izuku stopped. How could he express himself to Nejiro without offending her? Well, I was just thinking about how the rest of the trip is going to go. Nejiro stared at him before laughing at his answer. You know, I can tell when you're lying, though it's just at this moment. But it's fine if you don't want to say anything. I understand. Izuku opened his mouth, but faltered. Not even the brain cells he possessed helped him with the situation, so he opted to shut his mouth instead, which was probably the best option he could do instead of saying something he would regret. Still, ironic she saw through his lie easily while he couldn't. Hey, what do you say we get some hot chocolate and sit on the benches outside? Maybe that'll help take your mind off the things you're thinking about, Nejiro asked. She twirled a strand of her hair with a finger and eagerly waited for his answer. Is this because you want to drink some hot chocolate? Nejiro opened her mouth, but closed it. Then she pouted by puffing her cheeks out. Hey, how did you know? Was I right when I guessed you had a quirk that could read minds? And no, it was just the way you looked at me. I promise. Nejiro considered his statement and continued to play with her hair. But what's your answer? Isn't it bad to consume sugar before we go back to bed? Not if you're on vacation. Didn't you know our bodies are immune to calories and cavities when we celebrate holidays? Is that true? Nejiro giggled, grabbing Izuku's hand. Of course not, silly. Now come on, let's indulge in something sweet before we go back to bed. Izuku allowed her to take the lead. They went to the kitchen to grab some of the complimentary snacks the ski resort offered. Nejiro turned the dim kitchen night lights on with the help of her phone's flashlight. She grabbed a half-gallon bottle of milk from the fridge and poured it into 2 paper cups. Then she placed them in the microwave. While she waited for the microwave to do its job, Izuku sought to find their jackets. When a microwave beeped, Nejiro popped the door open and retrieved the 2 cups. She poured a packet of hot chocolate mix into each cup and stirred it with a plastic spoon. Once they were ready for consumption, Nejiro hummed to herself in satisfaction. Izuku met her in the kitchen with their jackets in his hands. Nejiro turned to face him with their hot chocolate in her hands. She smiled and stuck her hand out, which held his portion of hot chocolate. Want to trade? Izuku nodded his head and maneuvered his hand gingerly to accept the cup. Once he did, Nejiro took her jacket from his hand. Together, they walked out of the condo, down the hallway, and into the elevator. When the doors opened, Izuku stepped inside with Nejiro. Nejiro situated her cup on the railing, establishing its balance before wearing her jacket. Izuku stared at her while she did so. He was aware his eyes shifted in her direction more often than not, but he couldn't help it. After Nejiro finished wearing her jacket, she turned to meet his gaze. Izuku looked elsewhere, his eyes wandering the floor of the moving elevator. When he dared to look at her, a smile was present on her features. Nejiro inched closer to him, extending her hand to grab his cup of hot chocolate. Do you want me to hold that for you while you put your jacket on? Oh no. Izuku stopped himself mid-sentence. What was he trying to prove by denying her act of kindness? Hesitantly, Izuku handed her his cup and wore his jacket. Doubts about the authenticity of their relationship resurfaced in his mind. It was a construct of his mind, yet he couldn't stop the nagging feeling from tugging at the strings in his chest. It felt like Nejiro was going to pull the rug from under his feet and leave him in a desolate position. Izuku had done nothing to truly earn her love. He felt like he had to do something monumental to capture a maiden's heart. At least, from his perspective, Izuku's train of thought broke when the elevator bell rang. The door opened, revealing the lobby. Nejiro grabbed her cup of hot chocolate and took a sip. She looked behind and beckoned for him to follow her. When they exited the building, the quiet but calm atmosphere of the night hit them. The absence of humanity, the cloudless skies, and the stars winking at them enhanced the sequence of walking around the ski resort like a surreal dream. Upon finding a bench with a perfect view of the mountain, they took a seat and made themselves comfortable. However, it was difficult considering the cold seeped through their clothes. Izuku fiddled with his cup of hot chocolate, his mind steeped in thoughts. Was it the perfect moment to say something to her? Is the hot chocolate not to your liking? Nejiro asked. I didn't taste it. I was, ignoring it until now, Izuku said. Izuku peered inside the cup. Vapor rose from the cup and blended with the air until it disappeared. He took a sip of the hot chocolate, tasting its contents. But something didn't feel right. Like it was too sweet, causing it to be bitter. Just like his thoughts. Well, how is it? Nejiro asked, taking another sip of hers. Well, I don't want to lie. It's not that good. Nejiro giggled and nodded her head. Yeah, I figured you would say something like that. If I spend that much money on a nice condo, I also expect some nice amenities. At least that's the only bad thing about this expensive place. I offered to pay for half of the rent. Oh, I didn't mean it like that, Izuku. There's no need to feel guilty. I hope you didn't take my joke in that way. How about this? When we plan for another trip together, we can run through the financials of it and split the pay evenly so you don't feel left out. Izuku nodded his head. I like the sound of that. Nejiro grinned and returned to sipping hot chocolate. Silence whisked its way into their conversation. Izuku broke it. Nejiro, can I say something? Nejiro faced him, staring into his eyes. Was she trying to read his expression before he spoke? A second later, she nodded her head, anticipating his question. Actually, never mind. Nejiro tilted her head in confusion and leaned toward him. Then let's do it like this. Me taking a guess at what your predicament is. Okay, does this have something to do with you being afraid of me being your girlfriend? That other people at your school are going to bully you? Izuku shook his head. Nejiro hummed to herself as she contemplated her next thought. Do you want me to tell you? Izuku asked. Yeah, I can't read minds like you. Izuku smiled at her joke. How should I say this? I guess I can make it short. I'm just afraid that this is all fake. I'm sorry to word it like that, but I just want to know if I'm right. If this relationship has meaning and it's all real. But don't take offense, please. I don't want to hurt your feelings. And now I'm rambling. Nejiro giggled. Well, I think this relationship is real. Is there something specific I should do to show you it's real? No, but I just don't think I'm worthy. Nejiro stayed quiet. Her eyes averted his gaze and wandered the surface of the earth, searching for something. With the guilt swelling in his heart, Izuku looked elsewhere by staring into the cup of hot chocolate. Then would you believe you were worthy if I did this? Did what? Izuku didn't finish his sentence before he felt Nejiro's soft fingers tilt his face in her direction. Nejiro leaned in and gently kissed him on the lips. Shock rippled through Izuku's brain as he processed what was occurring, but the warm sensation of her lips upon his forced his mind to shut down and flow with the moment. When he accepted her invitation to the ski vacation, he didn't have kissing on his bucket list, but here he was. It was magical, maybe because he was doing it with someone as special as her. Izuku didn't know how long the moment lasted, but when she pulled away, he felt himself longing for her warmth again. Izuku stared at Nejiro in a daze. All the delayed emotions he should have felt during their kiss came rushing in. His cheeks burned and adopted a shade of red. Izuku lifted his arm to hide his face from Nejiro's perspective. Nejiro smiled. Your lips taste like hot chocolate. She noted. It does. To guess it would. Izuku said, his cheeks burning hotter. Nejiro giggled and continued to drink the rest of her hot chocolate. After a minute, Izuku lowered his arm when he gained control of his emotions. A very long and difficult minute. Izuku lifted his cup to his lips, but stopped himself. The sweet but bitter flavor didn't match the sweetness of the kiss he tasted. Instead, he swirled it inside the cup, staring at the mesmerizing motions as his thoughts ran rampant. His mind replayed the kiss repeatedly. Nejiro kissed him. Straight on the lips, too. Did people kiss each other on the lips as a joke? Izuku didn't think so. And for such a long moment, Izuku truly didn't think so. If not, then he was convinced Nejiro would not drop the other shoe on him. Hopefully, his doubts were convinced, too. Izuku reached over and tapped Nejiro on the shoulder, garnering her attention. Should we head back inside? I have a big day ahead of me today. Oh, right. You have to hit the mountain later when the sun comes up, yeah. Let's go back inside and sleep. Nejiro stood and stretched before she extended a hand to him. Come on, Izuku. Izuku smiled and took her hand. She lifted him to his feet and intertwined her fingers with his. She mouthed something to him, but because it wasn't audible, he didn't understand what she mouthed. With a giggle, Nejiro playfully bumped into him. Together, they strolled back to their condo, where they would prepare for the morning by sleeping. Izuku stood on top of the mountain. The monumental, daunting task of skiing was frightening when the perspective was sky high. It paled in comparison to the bunny hills he practiced on, and his cat ears let him know by fluttering with uneasiness. The exhilarating sensation reminded him of the time he first rode a bicycle. His mom was there for him, but after a couple of days, she encouraged him to venture independently. Sure, he conquered the fear after a couple of painful falls, but it didn't ease his dread and excitement about the possibility of losing balance. And the same fear coerced his stomach to flip pancakes. Hopefully, the pancakes were delicious to help ease his apprehension. In addition to his fear, another part of it was the notion of failing. It was difficult to have fun when he wanted to ski flawlessly, the desire to impress Nejiro weighing heavily on his mind. After all, she had spent effort, time, and money to teach him all she knew. It was an absurd concern, but still one. Out of the corner of his eyes, Izuku noticed Nejiro slide to his position and halt. With a yelp, Izuku instinctually raised his ski poles to protect himself. When said impact didn't occur and chunks of ice drifted down his snow pants, Izuku lowered his hands with an expression of fright. Nejiro lifted her goggles to her head and giggled. Did that scare you? She sang. A bit. You know, I can tell when you're nervous, but I believe you can do this, Izuku. And if you think I'm saying this just because I'm good at skiing, then you're wrong. I think you'll achieve it because you persevered. Much like pushing yourself to be the best hero you can be. Right? All right, then come on. What are we waiting for? I thought you said you were ready for this big day. Nejiro said. Izuku's heartbeat heightened to the heavens as Nejiro nudged him to the edge of the declination with her hands on his back. Oh, wait, Nejiro. Give me a second. Nejiro stopped and smirked. You're delaying the inevitable, don't you think? Don't tell me you're trying to think of a way to escape. Because if you do, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'll think of something. No, it's not that. I'm just trying to prepare myself right now. Like trying to create the perfect emotions for this tremendous achievement. It's been a while since I did something as significant as this, and I want to reflect on this moment in a way that I'll remember forever, but I need to build up the confidence to. Izuku, Nejiro said, drawing his name out to get his attention. You're going off on a tangent. Oh, I am? To guess out what I mean, I guess I am. How about this, Izuku? If you go down this mountain successfully, I'll reward you. Huh? What kind of reward? If you make it down there successfully, I'll give you another kiss. At first, it didn't register with Izuku, but when it did, the memory of his first kiss with her flashed across his mind. Izuku blushed crimson as he hid his expression from Nejiro, but when she giggled, it was obvious she had already seen it. It was difficult to deny the positive reward, but if he kissed her again, he didn't know if he could survive because of his embarrassment. Still, it was a magical one, and something he wanted to experience again. It was a conflicting emotion. I guess that could work. Izuku muttered. What was that? Nejiro asked, leaning a little closer. Never mind. Too late, haha. I already heard from you the first time, Izuku. I'll give you another kiss when you accomplish the goal I set before you. Now are you psyched up to try your best? Nejiro asked, a mischievous smile crossing her face. Why wise, but you're embarrassing me now, Izuku murmured. Am I now? Nejiro asked, patting him on the head. Izuku closed his eyes, relishing her comforting touch until she pulled away. When he reopened his eyes, he found Nejiro staring at him. She giggled and grabbed his hand, leading him to an invisible starting line at the edge of the mountain before she let him take the lead. Izuku inched closer to the edge and released a heavy exhale. Nejiro settled next to him with her goggles over her eyes. Hey, remember all the tips and tricks I taught you, okay? And I'll be right behind you, so if you fall, I'll pick you right back up. But not too close, since I don't want to crash into you. Izuku nodded his head and strapped the goggles around his head. As he peered down the trail they chose, fear returned with intensity. But with a tilt forward and a push of his ski poles, the world partially slanted until he adjusted to its slope. With each second down the lengthy descent, speed accumulated. Izuku bent his knees and leaned forward, adjusting to the velocity. Despite the moderate decline, Izuku blasted down the trail. Brisk winds whistled over his face, the shrill screams adding to the illusion of extraordinary acceleration. The scenery of trees and skiers blurred into each other as he shot past them. Izuku used his skis to mimic a slithering snake to slow his pace when he got a taste of the galvanic speed. Unintentionally, Izuku leaned in one direction, losing balance. The world rushed to strike him in the face. Izuku assumed the worst and braced for impact. He tumbled across the snowy terrain until he came to a halt. Izuku gazed at the sky and let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. It was a sigh of relief. Relief he was alive after suffering such a fall. He knew it wasn't enough to kill him, but there were times when adrenaline told him otherwise. Izuku heard someone slide to a stop and unbuckle their straps. Footsteps approached him until Nejiro peeked into his vision, obscuring parts of the cloudy blue skies. Nejiro withdrew for a moment as she unbuckled his skis and returned to his view. Are you okay, Izuku? You took a beating by falling a lot during this trip, Nejiro said, removing her goggles. Yup, just, give me a second, Izuku said, lifting his goggles to his forehead. Nejiro stared at him with concern before she sprinted to remove her skis from the path of other skiers. When she returned, she stuck the ski poles into the snow and sat next to him. A couple of seconds later, Nejiro shuffled a little closer to him and lay on the snow, attracting Izuku's attention as he stared at her with confusion. Nejiro? What are you doing? Izuku asked. Nejiro glanced at him and smiled. What do you think? Izuku trailed off. Something about the moment sparked an occasion of tranquility. Suddenly, he was reluctant to move, afraid it would ruin something nice between them. Together, they stared at the skies and the majestic formations of clouds passing by. Like a moment stuck in the eternity of his mind, Izuku concentrated on breathing. It was a nice detour. Hey, just to tell you my thoughts, I think you did a great job. Better than me, since I only got the hang of it on the last day of my first ski trip. I think you have the potential to surpass me this week. We could even go on another trip to a more difficult location. Imagine that. If we went on another trip, wouldn't that be great? Izuku felt his heart skip a beat. More than once. Their first vacation together wasn't over, and they were already planning another one. He couldn't deny her request, because he was eagerly anticipating it, too. Whatever it may be, yeah, that would be nice, Izuku said. Nejiro smiled and returned her gaze to the skies until Izuku used his arms to sit up. Nejiro noticed his movements and stood to help him. Her hands closed around his as she lifted him to his feet. Izuku accepted her help and watched the world accommodate his upright view. He stared at her before his eyes wandered to a couple of streaks of snow stuck to her jacket. Without thinking twice, Izuku extended his hand and patted her jacket to remove the powdery crystals of ice. Nejiro noticed it and stared at him with a playful smile. A twinkle of mirth shone brightly in her irises. Are you having fun cleaning snow off me? Oh. Sorry I got carried away. Izuku said, retracting his hand. Well, don't stop now. I don't mind it. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but there's no more snow left to clean. What a bummer, Nejiro muttered, bending down to pick some snow off the ground and sprinkling it on her scarf. How about now? Izuku chuckled, unable to contain his laughter. Well, now there's some. Then what are you waiting for? Nejiro asked. Izuku lifted his hand and plucked the bits of snow off her scarf, his fingers careful not to crush the delicate flakes. The sacred moment of silence and affection between the two of them bled into the reality of their world. At that moment, nothing mattered except for each other. It was euphoric. Only two people in the world could feel what they were feeling, and Izuku was grateful to be one of them. Nejiro smiled and reached to adjust his scarf that had suffered disorder from the fall. Then she wrapped her arms around him and embraced him. Izuku's heartbeat quickened. It had been growing ever since he cleaned the snow off Nejiro. But with each step of their intimacy, it hastened. Izuku returned her display of love by wrapping his arms around her and holding her as gently as he could. He was afraid to hurt her. It felt like any degree of strength was a demonstration of animosity. And even if it was a construct in his mind, he didn't want to cross the line any further. It was already a blessing to hug her and to experience everything they did together. Nejiro released a sigh of satisfaction as she rested her head on his chest and rocked back and forth. Slowly but surely, Nejiro interrupted what felt like an eternity of paradise by retreating from his chest and looking at him. Should he kiss her now? It was the perfect moment, but Izuku knew in the back of his mind he didn't deserve it until he made it to the bottom of the ski trail. However, as his mind fought itself, he noticed Nejiro leaning closer to his lips. Izuku didn't have to think any further. Their lips met for the second time that day. It was as wonderful as the first one. Each second with her was an hour in heaven. Who knew how good a kiss could feel? When their lips separated, Izuku blinked twice and looked at her in shock. And Nejiro? Weren't you supposed to kiss me when I finished the ski trail successfully? Meh. Why keep a promise when we both know it was going to be broken soon enough? Nejiro asked. Oh, I guess you're right. Izuku agreed. With a look around, Izuku noticed the world was still moving around them as people zipped by. Nejiro witnessed the same thing. She looked back at him and smiled. Shall we make our way to the beginning of the trail and see if we can make it in one shot? Nejiro asked. Izuku nodded his head. He never imagined everything would develop so swiftly from an invitation to a ski resort. But here they were. He fervently prayed his love for Nejiro wasn't fleeting, but a genuine feeling lasting beyond their shared moments. And it lasted until his old age. Izuku didn't understand how he entered a luxurious, unrented theater room with Nejiro. With the crimson curtains parted and stage lights shining on them, it felt like they were partaking in a performance. Peeking from the curtain on his side, Izuku noticed the rows and rows of empty chairs. Despite the barren world of seats staring at them, his heart hammered against his ribcage. Everything still seemed lively. The extravagance of being on stage was a dazzle of brilliance to witness. It was rich and elegant, prompting him to be nauseous. When he heard footsteps on the opposite side, Izuku glanced at the person he spent time with the last few days. Nejiro walked onto the stage with a little vibrance in her steps. Her approach influenced Izuku to do the same and meet her in the middle, just without the liveliness. The fear of getting caught encroached on his heart. When they stopped in the middle, Nejiro bowed toward him and extended her hand to him when she straightened herself. Izuku blinked twice, unable to understand what he was supposed to do because of his anxiety. Nejiro giggled and shook her hand in front of him. "Come on, Izuku. Get with the program. Take my hand." Sorry," Izuku exclaimed, accepting her hand. Nejiro smiled and lifted their intertwined hands in the air before she twirled in her beautiful, attractive white dress. The skirt of her dress rose and rotated with her, its grace found in the person wearing it. Izuku couldn't keep his eyes off her. She was the most beautiful woman in UA High School, but right now, she was the most beautiful woman in the entire world. And that was a fact. "Wow," Izuku said. Nejiro blushed and lifted their interwoven hands close to her face to hide it. "I don't know why I packed it to a ski resort, but I'm kind of glad I did. I know, unnecessary baggage, but something told me to." Izuku studied her. What did she mean by that? Was she thinking about him the same way he was thinking about her before they came on this vacation? Did it mean Nejiro invited him to the ski resort with the same purpose of asking him out of her mind? Or was she waiting for him to do it? Was he looking too deep into it, like he always was? Maybe. "Well, I think you're beautiful, Nejiro. The dress accentuates your beauty. And you're, beautiful." "I'm repeating myself, aren't I?" Izuku asked. Nejiro laughed at his mistake of repeating himself and nodded her head. But when her laughter faded, she stared at him, stared deep into his eyes. The way her blue eyes flickered, studying him as much as he was inspecting her, was comforting. Her beauty emphasized every moment. Both of them were experiencing true love, and nothing took it away from them. He was on top of the world, and he revered every second. "Hey, Izuku, what do you say we dance?" Nejiro asked. She lifted her free hand to grasp his other hand. "Dance? Right now?" "Of course right now, silly," Nejiro exclaimed, gently bumping her head on his chest. "After all, we both dance for our school festival performances, so we both know a little something about dancing. Besides, dancing is something every human being can relate to no matter where you go. So what do you say?" Izuku accepted her hand into his grasp as his brain processed what she said. He knew little about dancing, only from the school festival, but it didn't seem incorrect. Jiro had created a spectacular song, and it compelled Class 1A to dance with all their hearts. But right now, there was no music. Nejiro noted his reluctance and smiled. "Izuku, don't you worry about a thing. I learned a thing or two from trying to dance in the air and found a method that could help both of us to take it slow. Speaking of which, do you have your phone on you by any chance?" "I left mine in my casual clothes backstage." Izuku adhered to her request and handed her his phone after unlocking it. She let go of his hands and searched for something, leaving him empty-handed without her touch. Izuku looked at his hands and meddled with his fingers, searching for something to grasp. Something returned, but it wasn't her hand. It was his phone. However, something flooded through the speakers of his phone. Something slow and mellow with a hint of hopeful romance. "Here, put your phone in your pocket so we can dance to the music." Izuku did as she suggested. Nejiro progressed to the next phase of their planned dance. She guided his right hand to her left shoulder blade. Nejiro placed it there and gently squeezed his wrist to tell him that was where she positioned him to be. Concerned he'd apply too much pressure, Izuku gently wrapped his fingers around her shoulder blade and rested it there. He was redundantly careful, so much so that his hand shook from attempting to hold her securely, but not too tightly. Nejiro must have noticed, because she looked at him and smiled as she draped her left hand on his shoulder. Then Nejiro grabbed his free hand with hers and lifted it to the height of their head. "How are you feeling, Izuku?" Nejiro asked. Izuku looked at his feet and repositioned them where he wouldn't step on her by accident, but found the length of the skirt obstructing his sight. Izuku ignored the unsettling feeling he would step on her shoes and refocused his vision on her. "I'm feeling good, I think," Izuku said, realizing how close he was to her. He could lean in and steal a kiss if he wanted, but it didn't feel appropriate. At least, not currently. "You don't sound too confident," Izuku, Nejiro said with a giggle. "Come on, let me show you the steps. And don't worry if you walk all over my shoes, because I have sneakers on, not expensive high heels or low heels. They're too rich for my tastes. Maybe in the future, I'll like them more in a married future with you." Izuku blushed. "All right, now come on, let's dance. But take it slow," Nejiro said, starting the first steps. However, a mischievous smile danced on her lips. Flustered by Nejiro's teases, Izuku attempted to stay with her, but stepped on her sneakers. Multiple times, just as he feared. Izuku's mind raced as the blunders carved themselves in his mind. He couldn't lie. It was a frightening thought to entertain the notion of a wedding ceremony. After all, it wasn't something he was constantly thinking about. Somewhere in the background, Izuku felt Nejiro's hand slip from his and lift his face to make him stare at her. Their eyes met. "Dancing is better when you're looking into the eyes of your partner," Nejiro said with a smile. Izuku couldn't do anything but concur with her statement. Together, they swayed and moved with the rhythm of the song, the melody resonating in Izuku's heart until the final, lingering note faded. A few seconds of silence passed until Nejiro broke it with a soft sigh. "So Izuku," Nejiro said, twirling her hair with a finger, "you know how tomorrow is our last full day of vacation, right? What did you want to do tomorrow for our last day of vacation? Did you want to try another restaurant or go stargazing? Or maybe something else?" Izuku didn't respond at first, gathering his thoughts. As long as I spend more time with you, I think anything's fine." Nejiro smiled. Then she softly slapped him on the shoulder. "Izuku, I already know that, but I want a specific answer. Not a flirtatious one, though I would love to oblige." "Oh, sorry. Then can we do all of it, including skiing?" "I don't see why not," Nejiro said, wrapping her arms around his neck and leaning closer. Izuku closed his eyes and leaned to kiss her. Before their lips met, a door opened, causing dread to rush around them. Nejiro whisked him away with the help of her quirk. They hid behind one of the red curtains, out of view of the people. Nejiro leaned close to Izuku and pressed a finger to his lips. She glanced at the opening of the curtains to understand the location of the uninvited guests. From the awkward position they were in, Izuku found himself pressed against Nejiro's body. His mind raced, but he ignored it to the best of his ability when he heard voices echo throughout the theater. Their voices hovered around, exploring the room before the door closed and silence entered the theatric realm. Nejiro turned and looked at him with a smile. "I think that's our cue to leave." Izuku nodded his head as Nejiro stood and walked backstage. She hummed to herself as she approached her pile of casual clothes. She turned and beckoned for him to look elsewhere. "No looking." "Okay, Izuku," Nejiro sang. Izuku nodded his head again and turned, a billion different thoughts clashing in his head. It was difficult to speak when they narrowly avoided danger. He had an intrinsic fear the entire time they danced, and it came to fruition. But in the end, they were intact. And deep down, it was exciting despite the rules they broke. However, no occupants were using the room, so wasn't it fine? Or was he trying to find a reason to defend their rule-breaking actions? Izuku shook his head. There was no need to think about it. But as he shook his head, his cat ears swung around with him. It was the absence of Nejiro's playful touches on his cat ears that made Izuku realize something was wrong. Izuku lifted his hand to ensure the existence of his cat ears were still present. Izuku lowered his hands. He never noticed the absence of Nejiro's touch on his cat ears because of the rich moments he spent with her. Was it because Nejiro wanted to display her affection for him rather than focusing on his cat ears? It didn't instill sorrow in him. Instead, it felt nice. Nejiro's love for him was all he needed to know. Izuku was roused from sleep by the soft swish of the curtains parting, followed by a flood of warm sunlight. Instinctively, Izuku raised his hands to block the sun from entering his eyes. Izuku grunted and turned to the other side of the bed to avoid the bright illumination. Unfortunately, Mr. Pungi slipped from his arms and fell to the floor. Izuku cuddled with the next best thing available to him, the blankets. A second later, Izuku felt the weight of the bed shift to accommodate for another. The warmth of someone familiar pressed against his back. His heart beat a little quicker. Izuku knew who it was, but it didn't make the embrace any less. It was almost like she was jealous the blanket was getting more attention than her. MMPH? Izuku mumbled. You still sleepy from last night, Izuku? I know we slept late, but this is it. We have to pack up and leave before noon. Nejiro said, her sweet voice trickling into his ears. Izuku grunted again and snuggled his face deeper into the ridges of the soft blankets, earning a laugh from Nejiro. As Izuku tried to fall asleep again, Nejiro tickled the back of his head. Izuku tilted his head and remained still to confirm he was feeling correctly. Nothing occurred. With confusion, his cat ears fluttered. A second later, her touch continued. Izuku felt her fingers trace his curly hair as if she were memorizing every detail. When she experienced enough, Nejiro used her fingers to lift and puff his hair repeatedly, allowing it to bounce against her hand. As Izuku continued to ignore her, Nejiro reached higher and aimed for his cat ears. Her soft fingers gently brushed against them, eliciting a ticklish sensation that shivered down his spine. It coerced his cat ears to flit and flatten on his head to get her to cease, but she continued, much to his chagrin. When Izuku had enough of Nejiro toying with his hair and cat ears, he slowly turned, encouraging Nejiro to retract her hand and smile at him. A very warm but mischievous smile. Are you finally awake? Nejiro asked. I am now. Izuku responded sleepily. Izuku sat on the bed and dangled his legs over the edge. He lifted his arms to rub his eyes and stretched for the second time. Meanwhile, Nejiro cruised through the condo they were in, packing her belongings. Izuku stared at her for a couple of seconds. The way Nejiro hummed to herself as she packed her clothes into her luggage elicited a chord of sorrow within his heart. Izuku tried to fight the sentiment off. It was a losing battle. It only felt like yesterday their vacation began, but the blissful moments ended in a snap. Their last day had flashed in an instant, despite their planned activities bursting from the seam. During their session of stargazing last night, they shared a serene opportunity in the world of darkness and silence. With the absence of city lights, they were gifted the view of the atmosphere, where countless stars shimmered and twinkled. But as the night crept on, and the time ticked past midnight, they returned to their condo one last time. And within the blink of an eye, their last night at the ski resort was over. Why did it feel like when he was having fun, time passed the quickest? Even if he yearned for it to be extended, there wasn't a quirk in the world that could reverse time. All the fears he felt throughout the vacation returned to him like a monumental tidal wave. He didn't want it, but the thought of normalcy saturated him with an overwhelming sense of dread. Every moment they spent with each other was special. He was afraid it would not happen again because the conditions weren't right. As if for something brilliant to occur, things needed to be meticulously reliant on luck and perfection. And for Izuku, it felt like the ski resort was the sole reason their love had bloomed to soaring heights. Obviously, it wasn't true. She had loved him long before the ski trip. With a sigh, Izuku stared at Nejiro. She twirled around for a moment, searching for Mr. Pungi until she discovered its location. When she stood, Nejiro noticed his stare. She returned his gaze and tilted her head, placing the plushie on top of one of her suitcases. Izuku, are you okay? Nejiro asked. Oh yeah, I'm fine. Why? You're just a little quieter than usual. Are you sad the vacation is ending so soon? Nejiro asked, hovering closer to his position. Izuku nodded his head. Yeah, how did you know? With a smile, Nejiro slid into the bed with him, catching him by surprise, despite her closeness a couple of minutes ago. She pressed closer to him to absorb some of his warmth and provide comfort to him. Nejiro rested her head on his shoulder and linked arms with him. A portion of her hair fell over her eyes, but she ignored it. Was it bad he would never be used to her proximity? Don't worry about it, Izuku. I'm also feeling the same emotion you're experiencing. I thought this vacation would last forever, and we can spend more time with each other. Luckily, we can still spend time with each other in each other's dorm room when we go back. As for when I graduate, we'll think of something when we cross that bridge. So come on, don't feel so hopeless. Cheer up, Nejiro said, playfully pushing into his shoulder. Izuku matched eyes with her. It was difficult to not reciprocate her smile. Full of caution, Izuku lifted his hand to her face. He didn't know why, but the silky blue hair strands covering her expression were the culprit. Izuku lifted the lonely strands with his pointer finger and piled them on her head so that they could join their friends. Nejiro's eyes focused on him, silence reigning over their situation. Is my face that beautiful? Nejiro asked. Izuku froze in place, his heartbeat spiking from the panic flooding his system. Tu didn't mean to do that. Should we get packing? Nejiro laughed. We're still going to work on that confidence of yours, though I haven't been teaching you anything about it. So maybe I'm not a good teacher, but maybe I can make you more confident if I poke fun at you more, so you get used to it. Izuku chuckled, cherishing his last moments at the ski resort. No, I think you're an excellent teacher. You better not be saying that just because I'm your girlfriend, Nejiro said, gently slapping him on the shoulder. Izuku laughed, trying to get Nejiro to stop. The trouble brewing in his heart shifted to the back of his mind. He was sure it would come back when nostalgia paid him a visit, but for now, things were fine. When Nejiro relented, she took him by the hand and tugged. Come on, Izuku. This isn't the end just because our vacation is over. We're still going to have so much fun when we get back to UA High School. Trusting her words, Izuku found something impactful to rely on as they prepared to go back home. Before they left the ski resort, Izuku glanced at the mountain and the surrounding establishment one last time with a pensive but fond expression. He prayed she was right. The week after the ski vacation, Izuku's return to UA High School was seamless, as if the ski vacation was a relic of the past. Classes continued like normal, training to be a hero continued like normal, and life in the dorm continued like normal. It was all a little too normal. At some point, Izuku wondered if the vacation had ever occurred or if it had been a figment of his imagination. But it was proven false. Throughout the week, he saw her in the hallways of UA High School. Whenever they locked eyes, Nejiro waved at him with the same warm smile he was used to. And it only confirmed their special moments together, making his heart flutter with nostalgia for what was before he was whisked away to his next task. When night invaded their side of the world on a Thursday evening and Izuku had a chance to breathe, he lay on his bed. He stared at the ceiling, the thought of the ski trip invading his head without permission. What should have been a moment of his happiest days prompted his spirits to sink into a sorrowful trajectory. There were occasions he experienced in his life so special it was difficult to replicate, like receiving the one for all quirk from All Might or when he was accepted into UA High School. However, the ski trip was in its own lockbox, stored to reopen whenever the time was convenient. Or not, since he was thinking of it constantly without realizing it. Why wouldn't it? After all, he had spent it with the most important person in his life at the perfect location, and he wanted to re-experience it all over again. Izuku sighed and turned in his bed, embracing his pillow. He could taste the magic of the kisses, her warm embraces, their lovely dance together, her unexpected belly rub, and his confession to her. It was still vivid. Other people had to have experienced the same feelings, right? It wasn't like he was the only one indecisive on how to move forward from the highs he gathered, lifting him to heaven. But with every high, a low had to come. But why was it somewhat painful? Izuku rubbed his hands on his face and let out a groan. For a second, he remembered the morning they packed their belongings and left the ski resort. The fear she wouldn't love him anymore because of the lack of magical moments encroached on his heart. He was such an emotional creature, jumping from one fear to another. Izuku stayed in the same position for a few seconds, processing the emotions he felt one by one. He would be lying if he said he didn't want to taste freedom, to pull his anchor and drift into the ocean with a semblance of peace in his heart. With a sigh, Izuku buried his head in his pillow as he sunk deeper into his pit of desperation. Desperation for a time when nothing could go wrong. A moment in time where everything was a brief taste of heaven. What was he supposed to do when nothing magical transpired every day of his life? Would things resort to normality between the two of them, and was that okay? Was it okay that they didn't do something special every day of their lives? Did it have to be so magical to where every day was a high for him? It wasn't possible, but sometimes he wished it was. Sometimes Izuku wished nothing would change, and yet everything would change. It was a conflict fighting for dominance in his mind. If nothing changed, then life would be monotonous, the same things playing repeatedly. However, if everything changed, the security of his preferences would be replaced by constant novelty. And he didn't know which one he liked better. He supposed a bit of both, but life never gave him the option to pick. Izuku looked at his phone and poked it with his finger in interest until an idea collided with him. What was stopping him from visiting her? He stood from his bed and gazed at the door to his dorm room. He walked to the door when an epiphany hit him. Wait, can't I just sneak out from my balcony? It's an easy way to avoid my classmates, Izuku muttered to himself. And so, Izuku obliged to his mutterings. He wore the appropriate winter clothes and fixated the winter cat hat on his head, ensuring his cat ears fit comfortably. With a smile, Izuku opened the balcony door and jumped. Izuku softly landed on the ground, the thud diminished by the cushion the dirt provided.